Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar,
Excused.
Baumgardner, Cook, Corum, Court, Crowder, Donovan, Finberg, Fields, Garcia, Gardner, Guzman, Hill,
Excused.
Holbert, John, Jones, Kagan, Kafalis, Kerr, Lambert, Lumberg, Marble, Martinez-Huminick, Merrifield, Moreno, Neville, Priola, Scott, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Tate, Todd, Williams, Zenzinger,
Hold on.
Aguilar.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Here. With 34 present, 0 absent, 1 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Moreno, please come and lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, former colleagues, and guests, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal, Senator Fields.
Good morning, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the Journal of Monday, April the 30th, be dispensed with, and that the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is adopted. Committee reports.
April 30th, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, African Service and Marriage Committee as following. House Bill 1260 be postponed indefinitely. April 30th, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, African Service and Marriage Committee as following. Senate Bill 264 be postponed indefinitely. April 30th, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, African Service and Marriage Committee as following. House Bill 1001 be postponed indefinitely. April 30th, 2018, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, African Service and Marriage Committee as following. House Bill 1234 be amended as follows. As amended for the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. May 1st, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, African Service and Marriage Committee as following. Senate Bill 252 be amended as follows. As amended for the Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. May 1st, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, African Service and Marriage Committee as following. Senate Bill 251 be amended as follows. As amended for the Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. May 1st, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, African Service and Marriage Committee as following. Senate Bill 250 be amended as follows. As amended for the Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. May 1st, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, African Service and Marriage Committee as following. Senate Bill 249 be amended as follows. As amended for the Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. Recommendation placed on the consent calendar. May 1st, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, African Service and Marriage Committee as following. House Bill 1391 be postponed indefinitely. May 1st, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of the Marriage Committee as following. Senate Bill 1217 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. May 1st, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of the Marriage Committee as following. House Bill 1077 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. Recommendation placed on the consent calendar. May 1st, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of the Marriage Committee as following. House Bill 1004 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation.
Senate Services.
Correctly printed, Senate Joint Memorial 7, Senate Joint Resolution 11, correctly re-engrossed, Senate Bill 243 and 269, correctly re-engrossed, Senate Bill 259, 266, and 267, Senate Concurrent Resolution 4 and 5, correctly revised, House Bill 1184, 1263, 1269, 1286, 1302, 1313, 1340, 1342, 1346, and 1354, correctly revised, House Bill 1070, 1135, 1155, 1176, 1200, 1256, and 1285, correctly enrolled, Senate Bill 150 and 209.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by the good senator from Centennial, District 27.
The motion is for the Senate to proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by Senator Tate. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and we'll proceed out of order. Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, members. It's May 1st, and it's that time of year again to recognize May is Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. We've had resolutions on May 1st in past years. Today we're doing a tribute, and the tribute reads, the Colorado Senate convened in the second regular session of the 71st General Assembly hereby recognizes May is Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. Motorcycles occupy a significant place in Colorado and American history, having made contributions to numerous military campaigns, law enforcement operations, and the culture of the American West. For many reasons, Coloradans choose motorcycles as a transportation alternative. Over 200,000 motorcycles are registered in Colorado and are used on public roads and highways, providing reliable day-to-day transportation and recreational opportunities. Unfortunately, riders and passengers of motorcycles face countless hazards and unforeseen circumstances on the road. As such, state and national Share the Road campaigns have been created to help increase motorcyclist safety. The motorcycling community has made an ongoing commitment to increasing awareness of appropriate safety measures and to increase participation in rider training programs offered throughout Colorado to help avoid accidents. The members of the Colorado General Assembly recognize May 2018 as Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month to promote safety for all motorcycle riders through education and training, and to encourage all motorists to share the road in Colorado. Signed, Kevin J. Grantham, President of the Senate. Members, thank you for paying attention to this tribute. As I explained last year, I own a motorcycle and always very concerned about safety, both in terms of my own skills riding the machine, but also the awareness of drivers around me. And today, I know a colleague may say a quick word, but I do want to recognize, before I forget, because sometimes I forget these things, we have representatives from Bate of Colorado here in the back corner. If y'all would rise and be recognized. They are leaders in promoting motorcycle safety in Colorado. Thank you, members.
Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have a moment of personal privilege?
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I simply want to support this memorial because motorcyclists are always in danger when they're on the roads, and I want to remind all the car drivers to put your phones down. Thank you.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order for consideration of memorials.
The motion before the body is for the Senate to proceed out of order for consideration of memorials. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the Senate will proceed out of order. Consideration of memorials. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of the Senate Joint Memorial 6?
Senate Joint Memorial 6 by Senators Grantham and Crowder and Representatives Lewis and Ryer, memorializing former Senator Kenneth Ken Kester.
Mr. President,
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Memorial 6 and ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Carpenter,
Senate Joint Memorial 6 by Senators Grantham and Crowder and Representatives Lewis and Ryer, memorializing former Senator Kenneth Ken Kester. Whereas, our respected former colleague, Kenneth Ken Kester, a past member of the Colorado General Assembly, departed this life on February 17, 2018. And whereas, Senator Kester was born in 1936 in Lamar, Colorado, but grew up in Canyon City, Colorado, where he excelled in track and basketball. And whereas, when he was 29, Senator Kester bought a General Motors dealership in Los Alamos, Colorado, and became a fixture of the community. And whereas, Senator Kester was married to his wife Virginia for 38 years, and they had 3 sons, Dan, Ed, and Mike. And whereas, in 1974, Senator Kester decided to run for commissioner of Bent County, beginning his long career in public service, and he served as a commissioner for 16 years in 2 different stints. And whereas, Senator Kester followed up his service as county commissioner with 4 years as state representative for House District 47 and 8 years as state senator for Senate District 2, all representing the Arkansas Valley. And whereas, during his time in the General Assembly, Senator Kester served on many committees, including 2 years as vice chair of the Senate Health, Environment, Welfare, and Institutions and Senate Local Government Committees, and on the 2007 Senate Select Committee on Renewable Energy. And whereas, Senator Kester was known as an advocate for southern and rural Colorado, even if it meant voting across party lines, and he was respected by Democrats and Republicans alike. And whereas, Senator Kester was a devoted public servant and genuine friend who will be remembered for his hard work, dedication, and accomplishments. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 71st General Assembly of the State of Colorado, and the House of Representatives concurring herein, that in the death of Kenneth Ken Kester, the people of the state of Colorado have lost a dedicated public servant and an outstanding citizen, and that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, do hereby extend our deep and heartfelt sympathy to the members of his family and pay tribute to a man who served his state well and faithfully. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint memorial be sent to Senator Kester's sons, Dan Kester, Ed Kester, and Mike Kester, his grandchildren, Ryan Kester and Brianne Kester, his longtime friend, Jerry Laughlin, and the Canyon City Elks Lodge, number 610.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I move SJM 18006 resolution. I didn't know Senator Kester very well. He was actually in office prior to my arrival here, but I'd met him on a few occasions, and he was an incredible man and an incredible representative. He had a great heart and truly loved the people of Colorado. It has been an honor to serve in his shoes and represent the same district in rural Colorado that he did. And I might add, it's been a great honor to represent the same district that this man to my left also served. He will be greatly missed. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I echo those sentiments because I didn't know Ken as well as many of you did that are sitting over here on the sides of the chamber. I did follow him in Senate District 2 seat, and like Senator Crowder, I did not get to serve directly with him, just immediately following him. And it is interesting that we look at the memorial and all of his accomplishments, Senator Kester, and it takes two senators to fill his shoes in order to serve southeastern Colorado. What I do remember of Senator Kester, of course, mostly during my time in Canyon City and while he was serving as the senator for Senate District 2, his spirit, his kind of a gentle spirit, as when he would come in and talk to town halls, to the Canyon City Chamber Legislative Hour once a month during sessions, and his ability to talk about some of these issues. I remember in his second campaign in 2006 for the Senate, coming in for a legislative forum, and knowing that what came across to me as a gentle spirit, he had some fire, Dan. It was great to see Ken being the senator and taking on the issues and the tough issues for the district. And I was reminded of that as I was standing here listening to Mr. Carpenter read this. The one thing that stood out the most was in that second to last paragraph, that we pay tribute to a man who served his state well and faithfully. Ken Kester was a good man. I take that back. He was a good representative and a good senator, and he was a great man. And he is sorely missed, and I think that is evident by the folks that have come here to pay honor to him today. So thank you, Mr. President, and I will allow others to come to the well.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, of course, sit over in the seat that Senator Kester sat in, and when I look around the room on the current sitting senators, I realized that there was only one current sitting senator who was sitting there at that point in time who's still here, and that's me. And I actually was sitting, my desk was right beside Senator Kester's. So for 2 years, I had the privilege of sitting right beside him and watching him on the floor and talking to him on the variety of things that happen. And a couple of things stand out in my mind. One, the President already referred to his gentle spirit. He really did have that gentle spirit, and as all of you know who are or who have sat in these chairs, there are times you don't feel like being very gentle. But somehow he kept his composure and he kept his sense of humor. And the other thing that I recall, which very much goes along with this, is the picture in my mind of Senator Kester is him sitting there smiling. Not looking somber, not looking troubled, but literally smiling. And if you review his entire service of being an elected official, that's remarkable. If I added it up right, he spent 28 years as an official representing his community and his county and his area. And to go that long with that good of an attitude is remarkable. And my commendation for his memory and the example that he gave and leaves to all of us to take the issues seriously, but don't take yourself so seriously that you can't see the joy in it all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to those who have served in this chamber before, and welcome back. So many of you are examples for us and have been examples for me. Senator Kester is someone who I did not have the opportunity to serve with, but I did come and talk with him and ask him for his vote, because I was out there on the other side of the glass at the time, and many of you were in this or the other chamber when I was out there. Senator Kester was someone who provided a tremendous example, and the previous speakers have addressed it, of someone who would greet a person with a smile and courtesy and time and an ear. He was someone who would say, yes, I'm with you, or no, I'm not, and do either of those with tremendous respect. So as we step out of the way and allow those who did serve with him time to come and remember him, I think that's what's important. But for those of us who are here today, if you didn't have the opportunity to know him, know from me and those I'm sure who come after that he serves as a great example for those of us who are here today. To give time, lend an ear, and whether you're with the person or against them, to give them respect, be courteous, and maybe return that twinkle in the eye and the smile, maybe a warm handshake, a thank you, just for the opportunity to be here and serve together and deal with the hundreds of issues that come before us. Welcome back, Senators. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about Ken Kester. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I, too, welcome all of the former colleagues back into your House, your Senate. And I recall when I was a lowly freshman in the House, and we had to find a Senate sponsor. And I remember walking over here to this chamber when I was still in the House and looking around and thinking, okay, I like to work in a bipartisan manner. I'm going to just walk up boldly to someone and say, will you be my Senate sponsor on a particular bill? And Ken Kester's name was the one that was given to me and said, you know, Ken is a person who is noted for working across the aisle. He's noted for being a true gentleman, and he has such a spirit of collegiality that you will really enjoy working with him. So I boldly walked up to him and said, Senator Kester, I'm Representative Todd from Aurora, and this is the bill. And we became good friends. We became good friends over, I don't even remember what the bill was, but I remember his spirit, and I remember his gentleman behavior and his above-board treatment of all people. And that is something that I think we need to, in these last 7 days for sure, but as we continue to march forward, remember those that went before us, how to treat one another, how to be respectful, and how to problem solve together. And Ken was a good teacher. He was my first senator to ever carry, other than my predecessor, but he was the first other senator that I actually carried a bill with. And he was a true friend to many, and he was the same every day. You could count on the way he would treat you, regardless of what was going on. He will be sorely missed, I know, by his community. And when I heard of his death, I was saddened because Colorado lost a great citizen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to welcome all of our former colleagues and senators and representatives here today. Welcome to the family. And oftentimes we don't usually welcome people who are sitting in the gallery, but I did notice that some of the folks who work on the other side of the glass are gathered up in the gallery today to listen to this memorial for Ken. And I think that shows a lot. I think as the majority leader mentioned, the folks that we work with out in the lobby, their respect towards Ken is showing today as well. My mother-in-law, Becky, is joining us today. When I told her that we were going to have this memorial, she wanted to come down and listen to the words that were spoken for Ken. So when I was first appointed down here, I thought I was kind of a big deal, getting appointed to the House of Representatives, and my mother-in-law didn't seem to really show that much emotion, and I'm like, but I got appointed to the House of Representatives. And she's like, yeah, well, I have a neighbor who's in the Senate, and his friend was Secretary of State, so, being in the House isn't that big a deal. I was like, come on, mother-in-law. But, so that was my first introduction to knowing that my mother-in-law knew Ken outside of this building. And one of the things being new down here, being appointed in the middle of session with the budget going on, and then those of you who have served in this chamber or the other chamber know that things can sometimes get just a little crazy the last couple of weeks of session, and a lot of bills passing by. And one of the hints that was passed on to me, perhaps by the representative that I was seated next to, as you all know, the current independent senator from Wheat Ridge that I was sitting next to. She gave me some hints of how to get through when the bills are flying furiously, and you, quite frankly, don't have time to read every single word of every single bill. One of the things you can do is look at who the sponsor is and kind of get an idea of where the politics of that bill might lie. And so as a newbie over in the House, you learn that, well, if the Senate sponsor is a Democrat, you can kind of take some direction off of that, and if the Senate sponsor is a Republican, you can kind of take some direction off that. So that was a good way to kind of get through those last few weeks of session and being able to get through bills quickly. However, most annoyingly, when the name Kester was the Senate sponsor, it didn't give me any indication. I quickly learned there was no indication of what the politics behind that bill was. And I think as the former speaker up here was saying, the bipartisanship with which he served, while today, as we remember him, is certainly a great thing for his memory, it didn't help out the new guy over in the House at the time. But I remember his smile too. I remember that he was the gentle spirit, as has been mentioned here, and he was very much a role model for me starting my term out here. So thank you, Mr. President, and again, welcome to everyone who is here for this memorial today.
Is there any other discussion? Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before we wrap this up, I would ask for the Senate to be put in recess so that former colleagues can come to the well and speak on this memorial.
Thank you, Mr. President. Indeed, we will stand in a recess so that former members may come to the well. Senator Anderson, would you like to join us? And I think what I'll do, if it's all right with everybody, is go down through the list I have, and each of you look forward to having you speak. Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's the problem of having your name start with A. You're first on the roll call, too. First, I'd like to read just a email I received from Ron Tech that he could not be here. He lives in Grand Junction. Senator Tech. I regret not being able to be here in person, but I do want to let Ken's friends and family know I'm thinking of him. My thanks to Senator Anderson for conveying my thoughts. My recollection was that Ken was in the lower house when I first joined the Senate, but after a couple of years, he was promoted to the upper house. And what a great thing that was for the Senate, because Ken brought a great sense of humor as well as great knowledge of local government with him. As a former county commissioner, he was able to remind us of the consequences of the actions we take upon local governments. He also always demonstrated a certain class, which, Lord knows, we needed from time to time. When we leave the offices we have been honored to serve in, the thing I think we miss most is the friendships we develop in our time here. Ken is certainly one of those friendships I missed after I left, and I pray for his family as they mourn his passing. Myself, I just served with Senator Kester in the Senate. And I would like to say to the family, because I know some of you, I know you miss him. I missed him because when I left here, I didn't get to see him anymore, except for GOCO. I had the privilege of serving with Senator Kester on the GOCO board as well. And the other person that contacted me, and I'm sure he'll contact you, the family, is Senator Steve Johnson. He had a county commissioners meeting this morning and couldn't be here, and he really is sorry because he wanted to be. Senator Johnson and Senator Kester, they were interesting. They played a lot of jokes on people. They both had a great sense of humor. And if the Senate misses anything, it's that wonderful humor that they brought to the Senate. I remember one time, the other thing Ken was really good at was counting votes, by the way. That's because he worked both sides of the aisle. I had a bill that one of the wonderful lobbyists talked me into combining. I was doing the construction for the CU hospital, that bill. We needed a prison at the same time. The Republicans didn't want to construct a hospital, and the Democrats didn't want to construct a prison, so we put it together. Well, I was one vote short. Guess who I got to get me a vote? Ken Kester, Senator Kester. And he found Senator Hagedorn, who's sitting over there in the corner, got his vote, and we passed the bill with flying colors. I know how much he meant, Senator Kester meant to this body. He was an excellent commissioner. He represented his district well, very well. He knew what representative government meant. And I thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Senator. I apologize. I was rather presumptuous to assume that all of the former senators may want to come to the well. So if you do not care to speak, I will just recognize you. You can wave, and then we will move on. Senator Brophy. Senator Brophy, thank you for being here. Senator Evans. Oh, John's not here. Senator Foster.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is indeed an honor to be here this morning. Sadly, however, Senator Kester became my friend. We had something in common. We both came from local government. He as a commissioner and me as the former president of the Denver City Council. And I could always count on him to work with me to make sure that local governments weren't stampeded by people in the legislature that thought that they knew everything. In fact, I was really going to present a bill once saying that in order to be elected to the legislature, whether in the House or the Senate, that you had to serve a term in local governments. So you would know exactly what some of these bills and laws would have done to our local governments. He had a wonderful sense of humor. You need a sense of humor to be down here. You can't take yourself so seriously. And once you're no longer here, friends, your phone will not be ringing like it is now, just a little, for your information. It was truly a pleasure. We would sit and he would support my bills sometimes, not always. I would support his sometimes, not always. But he was thoughtful, he was fair, he was sensitive, and he was very smart. And when I read that he had passed away, I felt a true sadness. So I'm here today to bring that thought here. Thank you very much.
President Fitzgerald.
Thank you so much, members, guests. I think it is a true tribute to Senator Kester that both sides of the aisle are filled with past members who remember him so fondly. It may come as a surprise to you that I had Senator Kester as my guest for dinner at my home. I'm not sure if that bipartisanship exists today, but he was an enjoyable person to be with. I've only come back to the Senate twice. This is my second visit. The first time was to memorialize Senator Iskar. The people that I served with, Senator Takis, Senator Gordon, Senator Iskar, and now Senator Kester are gone. They may be gone, but their memory and the way they served lives forever. It is a true mark of a democracy when members remember each other fondly, no matter their philosophical or political leanings. To his family, we loved Ken Kester for his graciousness, for being a true gentleman, and for someone who was true to his word. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Hagedorn.
Thank you, Mr. President, members, visitors. I had the privilege of serving with Ken 2 years in the House and then 6 years in the Senate. 4 of those years in the Senate, we had 18-17 majorities, 2 years Republican majority, 2 years Democratic majority. And I can probably say with some confidence that certainly during, actually it was my 2 years we had a 25-15 Democratic majority, is that right? 2015. And then the first 2 years I was in the Senate, again it was 18-17. So 6 of the years I was down here, it was 1 vote. And there was, dynamics were a little different, is that there was a number of issues where you saw it to be very partisan, but a lot of other issues, you saw people crossing over both sides of the aisle. And one of the things is that I had a great relationship with Ken, and we'd spent a lot of time killing time in the last couple of weeks of the session, joking and making tacky remarks, and but it certainly took away some of the angst and stress of those last 2 weeks. One of the things I learned very early, I will say more so in the Senate when he and I had the opportunity to first serve together than we were in the House, is that if you wanted Ken's vote, you present your proposal to him and let him know exactly how it was going to benefit his constituents. And if you could demonstrate that to Ken, Ken would not only quite often not just agree to support the bill, but would also co-sponsor it. And that was one of the things that, and once Ken committed, he was unshakable. He was a man of his word. And tremendous respect for Ken, and as Senator Anderson said, is that he pulled the same thing on me on that one bill, is that I was kind of torn because the hospital was to be adjacent to my Senate district, but I also did not particularly want a prison, and so he pushed me on the hospital that was to be adjacent to my Senate district. So he brings back a lot of fond memories of my years down here. He'll certainly somebody that I will remember years and years ahead. So anyway, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Hagedorn. Senator Hernandez.
Thank you, members and Mr. President and former members. I have just a quick little story to tell you, but what I remember about Senator Kester is not only did he know how to work both sides of the aisle, he knew how to work both chambers simultaneously at the same time. He would monitor a bill, and he knew where every single vote was. Well, one time he came to me and said, you know, Senator Hernandez, I've got this little amendment to the branding bill. Branding bill? Sounds fine to me. Not a problem. Well, come to find out, and he said, it has to do with the branding inspectors being able to protect themselves. I thought, this is Senator Kester. He would never lead me astray. Well, I got a tremendous amount of pushback because that particular amendment was going to allow them to carry weapons. So as you can imagine, the pushback that I got. And I had to say, but if Senator Kester says it's a good amendment, I'm going to stick to my word and do that. Come to find out, what Senator Kester was really doing was using that amendment to leverage what he really wanted out of that branding bill. So it was enjoyable working with him and to realize how smart he was strategically and how he knew how to maneuver and get this process done for the people of his district. And my father lived in La Junta at the time when he was the senator, and I happened to mention, he says, oh, I know exactly where your dad lives. And he says, yeah, so he paid close attention, and he would cross both sides of the aisle, whatever it took to represent his district. And he always said, as many others of you know down here, you represent your district first. And so he was a man of ethics, and what does that mean? It means you do the right thing all the time, even when no one's watching. And that was Senator Kester. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hernandez. Senator Hillman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. I know in this hectic last few days of the session, this is a sacrifice of your time, and for a gentleman like Ken Kester, I think it's truly worth it. Ken was a true friend to me back when he first ran for the House. I was running the first time for the Senate. We wound up sharing Crowley, Otero, Bent, and Baca counties, and we would sometimes get out of here on a Friday afternoon and try to schedule 2 town meetings on Friday afternoon, spend the night someplace, and hit the other 2 counties on Saturday morning. Ken had a gift for gab, which came from being a car salesman many years in his life. So when we got into town meetings, they would tend to go on, not so much because Ken made them go on, but because, of course, your constituents have lots of things they like to talk about. So we developed a routine, which was, in order to make sure that we started on time, when the meeting began to run long, I would leave early and go to the next town meeting to get it started on time, and Ken would finish up and meet up at the next town meeting. what I enjoyed about Ken, and for the last few years that we served together, Ken sat there, and I sat here, and we enjoyed. One of those years was in the majority. One of those years was in the minority. You all can figure out which one we enjoyed more. But Ken was truly a low-maintenance senator, and I'm sure all of you know your colleagues, which ones you can go to, talk to once, and you know where they're going to be, and which ones require a little bit more attention. And you really appreciate the ones like Ken, who the only thing Ken ever required was that you simply be upfront and honest with him. Ken's gift of gab, interestingly enough, though, did not translate into him speaking at the well very often. He would do that when he presented bills, and to watch Senator Kester present a bill was a treat, because Senator Kester would have his explanation of the bill and then do his best to answer questions. And when Senator Kester was presented with a question, he always responded with words and sentences, but when it was done, it was debatable if either party knew much more about the bill, and yet everybody went away with a smile on their face. Lastly, I want to credit Lynn Bartles, whose memory is better than mine, for bringing this to my attention. I did remember it after she said it, but we were debating the statewide smoking ban and whether or not it was appropriate to prohibit smoking in bars, and I remarked that no one ever goes into a bar for their health, and Senator Kester said, well, it sure calms me down. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader Hillman. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, Ken was just, he and I were real good friends. Steve Johnson, and of course, we always used to refer to Senator Anderson as Mother, you know, because we had to go through Mother before we did anything. But Ken also, he and I lived at the Warwick together, and we exercised together, and had a few cocktails together, and he was just so much fun. But the thing that impressed me, so he was a great golfer. So he would take me out on the course, and I'll never forget, and we were out at Park Hill, and he said, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do, Senator Jones. I'm gonna give you 3 holes, and I bet you I'll beat you. I said, oh, you can't give me 3 holes. And he did, and he beat me. We played, and then we would go on trips for NACO, and he would take me out on the golf course. We were in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'll never forget that. And it was hot, and Kelly, one of the lobbyists, she also went and played golf with us, and he just beat me. But it was so much fun, and I remember when I debated Senator Groff on the on affirmative action. We had this debate for 3 hours here on this floor, and it was getting attention coming from everywhere. And so when I would get through speaking, and Senator Groff would come back and he would speak, and Kester would call me over, and he says, "Okay, you're doing good now. You're doing good. Don't let up. Don't let up." But he was always with me, and I just really appreciate him. And to the family, I know when I heard about that he had passed away, tears came to my eyes, because I know time is short, and to all of us, and I just want you to know that he was just a great friend. I'm going to miss him, and just there will never be another Ken Kester.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Senator Keller.
Well, thank you, members, for this honor to come back and remember our fellow senators, unfortunately, in memorials. But I served with Senator Kester for 8 years, from 2002 until 2010. And as I'm listening to the comments of everyone speaking this morning, I'm picking up two themes, and I can corroborate those two themes. The first one is that many of us have worked with Senator Kester on bills, but we don't remember what the bills were. What we remember was working with Senator Kester, and what an honor it was to work with the senator. That's the memory we took away and hold dear today, is what a wonderful man he was to work with and how gracious he was. The second theme that I'm picking up, and it's the one I had wanted to address this morning, was how wonderful a gentleman he was. You know, in the 8 years that we served together down here in this body, never once was a negative comment ever uttered by Senator Kester. Never once was there a nasty comment or a snide remark that was too low for him. He rose above that, and he was a perfect gentleman at all times, and it's a great legacy that he leaves by his example that I think all of us, including myself, should try to remember him for and try to emulate what dignity he brought to this office. We will miss him. He was a wonderful man, and the state of Colorado has lost a true champion.
Thank you, Senator Keller. Senator King.
Good morning. It's good to be back. See everybody, all the faces. Ken Kester was a unique man. Well, I got to know him kind of in a different way because we had the same initials. And so as we would get different things that would come onto our desks, a lot of people, especially in the House, they would always put the two initials, and they would assume that what was for your desk, and you would put it on your desk, and then you would find out it wasn't for you because it was for Ken, or vice versa. And so it was just a lot of fun to serve with Ken because he had such a great rapport with so many people. He could have conversations with everybody, and he was a great gentleman as far as who he was to work with. I think more than probably anybody that I ever served with, more people came down and saw Ken as constituents than anybody else that ever worked with. He would always have people coming up from his district, and he's always welcoming people here. I think they must have, I don't know if he paid them to come up and see him or what he did, but he got a lot of people from his district all the time. They were just always happy to come up here and meet with him. And I remember 2 years, I think Nancy Spence and Ken and I were sitting in the back, and I think virtually twice a week or 3 times a week, here came constituents, and he would be greeting them and putting him on the floor and having him sit with him. I think that was a true tribute of who he was. He was connected to the people that he served with, and he was really happy to be down here and do it. There was a few times when the session would get a little long, and Ken would get a little tired, and he would just take a little nap and enjoy the routine. He probably was bored because we were not saying anything worth listening to, but it was he was just something that he was able to do that and really enjoyed doing that. So I'm just honored to be able to be a part of this tribute today. I think that we are honored by who he was and what he accomplished and how he served the state of Colorado. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator King. Senator Kopp.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to share a few words. What an honor it is to be back with you all. I'd like to share a few words with the family. I really loved Ken. I was a minority leader and caucus chair during the entire time I served with Ken. And, of course, being a minority leader, much as a majority leader, I'm sure, I never had that experience, you bear a kind of a unique burden, and that is to whip up your troops to toe the party line, which worked pretty well for us, except for there was this guy, Ken Kester. And I think there's a certain integrity that I'd like to just share with you all that takes a little bit of time and reflection, I think, to understand as it relates to Ken. There'd be many times, and it's sort of humorous, there'd be many times when I would share with Ken, you know, this is really important for the whole caucus here. Ken said, yep, I understand. So, what do you think? Well, okay. Okay, what? Well, yeah, okay, yep, okay, got it, yep. And that was Ken's way of saying, I probably am not with you, but I'm not going to fight you about it, because this game is a lot bigger than this than this one bill. And as I've reflected on my own time here, I hope you don't mind just a very brief personal reflection. Now that I've stepped away, when you see people like Ken Kester, a little in the rearview mirror now, you realize there is such integrity when you consider the pressure cooker that is this place, and the focus that is placed upon each of you from your constituents and from people that are not your constituents. And we didn't have social media back then the way that you all have it now. And if you think about the time Ken served here, it would have been much easier for Ken, frankly, to ignore a rural district and vote with his party. And Ken kind of had a way of separating himself from the political tearing that really engulfs so much of our politics today, and you all know that, and I deeply sympathize with you all. Ken is a good man, and I think his legacy is being well accounted here. I consider him a friend, and every time I've thought of Ken, I truly have done it with tremendous warmth in my heart. Rest in peace, Ken Kester.
Thank you, Senator Cupp. Senator Penry.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. Thank you, members, for devoting a few minutes of your time to hear the recollections of who is a great man. Mr. President, as I heard you deliver some remarks on Senator Kester, it occurred to me that he would be very proud of the fact that his successor is a Senate President today. And same with you, Senator Crowder. You've carried his legacy of pragmatism and leadership forward in a meaningful way. And it's also incredibly impressive, the number of senators who have come today. If you're measured by the number of has-beens you draw to an event like this, Senator Kester probably deserves a glass. It's an impressive cast, and it's wonderful to see so many, and also some of the great leaders, honestly, of this body in the last 25 years are sitting in this chamber today. And so thank you all for being here, for taking a minute to remember Senator Kester. Senator Kester was all the things that he's been described as: kind, committed, caring, hilarious to the extreme. If we have understated one piece of his legacy and who he was, it was his humor. Lynn Bartles was his de facto press agent, and I'm certain she went to him just because he was always capable of delivering a really, really good line. And Senator Hillman, kudos to you for delivering one of the PG lines, or more PG lines that he delivered through his many years here. Senator Kester was, first and foremost, that everybody's hitting the nail on the head when they talk about him voting his district. I was the minority leader for his last 2 years down here, and we'll have these tough issues that occasionally are party line, but sometimes you just have sort of what I would call these fence line disputes where the lobby and the interest groups would come in, and there were tough calls. And people would come in and say, how do we get Kester? Senator Kester was always in play. He was always available. He was willing to listen and hear, which is itself an attribute that, in the spirit of Senator Kopp, you look back and you hope you did as well as he did. But I would tell people, go to his district, go get his clerk, go get his teachers, go get the Chamber of Commerce. Those folks were disparate. They're important to all of us. Really, they decided Senator Kester's votes on those tough issues, and he towed that line well. Senator Kopp's recollections as a guy who was a minority leader is the same as mine. It's great to see President Fitzgerald here, who herself is such a great leader and historic leader in this body. When she was Senate President her last 2 years, I was a lowly freshman, but we were an active minority, and we would frequently try to count votes around her. And as I recall, we needed 3, and occasionally we'd get 3 or 4 votes. But I always knew I was in trouble when we were at an 18-17 vote count, and I would see Ken Kester sitting over there by Mary Alice Mandarich, who I see back there right now, or Joan Fitzgerald, and occasionally my good friend Senator Spence, who's also here today, would be one that got away on the other side. And yet, I never had an ill word or a sour moment with this guy. Senator Kopp described it well. His ability to be magnanimous in the crucible of it all down here was really remarkable. Finally, I would say about as a representative, he listened to his district, but he was also a fierce advocate for rural Colorado. I miss Senator Isgar's tribute, and I'm sorry that I did. I was out of town, but he was very much cut from that same mold. They were partisans. They believed deeply in the principles of their party, but when these issues that were important to rural Colorado came together, names like Isgar and Kester, Senator Brophy's here today, Senator Schwartz, myself, and others, we were together. We were together, and Kester was always that way. In fact, Kester never huffed and puffed. He was not capable of delivering a partisan speech, at least I never heard it. The one time his ire really did get up was over that the Pinyon Canyon fight, which was a hard one for Republicans. Agriculture versus military, Colorado Springs versus rural Colorado. And I remember it's reflective of how this man worked his bill. I was new in the House, and he brought ranchers and farmers and folks and sat down and educated folks, got ahead of the debate even before there was a bill debated, and at least when we were there, effectively won the debate in large measure because of his leadership and his ability to work an issue and a bill. So it reflects so well on him, as I said, all the people who are here today. Senator Kester represents the best in this Senate because he represents the best in us as people, and it's an honor to have served with him, and to the family, our condolences, but you should be very, very proud of the wonderful legacy he leaves behind.
Thank you, Senator Penry. I'm going to invite Representative Ragsdale. Thank you for being here, Representative Ragsdale. I'm sure you always wanted to speak in the Senate well, but Senator Schroeder. Thank you, Senator Schroeder. Senator Spence.
Good morning, members, friends, family of Senator Kester. I can't tell you how shocked I was when I heard that Senator Kester had passed away. I was shocked because I just talked to him the week before. He called me from Arizona. He said, I said, what are you doing? Having fun? I'm loving retirement, he said. He said Jerry was on the golf course, and he was a little bit too tired to play that day. And so to hear, the week later that he had passed was a total shock. And since I wasn't able to get to Los Animas to the funeral services, I wanted to be sure to be here today to let you know how much I respected, admired Senator Kester, and what a great friend he was. In today's terms, they'd call it BFFs. That means best friends forever for those of you that don't do Facebook. And, we were such great friends, great colleagues. We used to play golf together with my husband, too. We'd drink wine together, but only one glass because his doctor had ordered him, cut back on the alcohol. When Senator Fitzgerald mentioned that she had him for dinner, well, I can do you one up. I had him overnight. Senator Kester and I believe Senator Jones. I think it was a snowstorm or something, and I'm kind of halfway to Colorado Springs, so they both spent the night, and Pete and I did our best to entertain them, but we had a lot of laughs about that. He's such a family guy. He used to talk frequently about Virginia, his wife who had passed on. And when I talked to him a week before he passed on, he said he was so happy because now his 3 sons were now located all in Colorado. And that meant such a lot to him to have his voice back in the state. When it was mentioned that he had such an allegiance, such a compelling constituency, I can tell you the reason. I can tell you what he did. And I don't know how many of you know this, but frequently I would pass by the bullpen. I'd pass by his little office in the corner on the way to mine, and he'd be in there writing notes. I said, Ken, what are you doing? And he said, you know, it's so-and-so's birthday, or so-and-so had a baby, or somebody passed away. He would write personal notes day after day after day to his constituents. And I swear that's why he was so successful and had such easy elections. He really held his votes close, his constituency close, and the voters loved him. As I think Senator Penry said, he always had a crowd from back home. They really appreciated what he did for them. We laughed a lot. We had fun. We played golf. We always said, you know, we would always be best friends. We talked fairly often on the phone. And I think it's because we were bonded, because we were the oldest ones, both in the House when we served and in the Senate, you know, and I would always say, you're older than I am, and he said, only 6 months. And we used to joke a lot about the fact that we were kind of the mother and father, or the grandmother and the grandfather of both the House and the Senate. Other than Senator Heath, who might have been pushing us for the age thing. But Senator Kester was a wonderful man, and he will be missed, and I appreciate so much the opportunity to have so many of us gather together and let the family know how much that Ken meant to all of us. Rest in peace, Ken.
Thank you, Senator Spence. Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, distinguished senators and honored guests. It's my pleasure to rise and honor the memory of my friend, Senator Ken Kester. We spent some time together. My first year in this chamber was Ken's last year in the chamber. We served together as senators, but I really got to know him more in my prior capacity, working out on the other side of the glass in the hallways, and had a very good time getting to know Ken Kester as a person and understanding just how deep his commitment was to this state and his constituents. And he was a remarkable man, and I don't want to belabor the point, but it's been said before, and I'll repeat just a few of his many virtues. He was a gentle soul. He was a kind person. He was dignified, and he was a statesman. But there was also this twinkle in his eye, a mischievous streak, and a sense of humor that would surprise you, and you wouldn't realize it, that you were all of a sudden falling into and becoming the butt of a joke of something that Senator Ken Kester had arranged. And it was fun to watch because he had a way with people where he used his humor and his kindness to draw you in and keep you close. And so many people have described the relationship he had with his constituents, the relationship he had with his colleagues. And it was that wonderful personality, that wonderful charm, and that quiet quality of graciousness that I will remember most about Ken Kester. And it's the reason I wanted to come and honor his memory today. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Senator Stedman. Senator Toktrop.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first, I want to thank Senator Spence for not remembering me as one of the older ones in the class. I served with Senator Kester. We all came in 1999, and that was the first group of senators and representatives, the largest group because it was the first year that term limits really took hold. And we had a very large class, and it was also the first year that Ledge Council had orientation. So we were sort of the guinea pigs. It was also the first year that we got laptop computers. Now you all have pads, and I don't think you do anything, with paper anymore. But this was the This was the Middle Ages. But when we were taking the class on learning how to use the computer, I did a little bit of it at work, and I can remember Senator Kester and I, then Representative Kester, sitting there and really dumbfounded about what do we do with this high-tech equipment. Ken and I served in the House together. He came over to the Senate, and then I followed him in the Senate. And I will tell you a couple stories about him that were great. When he was in the House, there was a bill that was brought forward by the Boulder County delegation about prairie dogs. And what they wanted to do was to make sure when prairie dogs were going to be moved for development that they could move them into another county. And of course, those other counties would be rural counties. Well, then Representative Kester was very, very adamant against the bill, and I just can remember how he fought it, and I think the bill died. But we had a lot of fun with the prairie dog issue. Another bill that Senator Kester, then Representative Kester, carried was the reauthorization of the cosmetologist licensure. And at that time, Senator Klober carried it in the House, and Representative Kester carried it in the Senate. And of course, many of the cosmetologists that came down to lobby the bill were young, good-looking women. Well, then Representative Kester and Senator Klober always had to make sure that they had constant meetings with these women to make sure that the bill went well. And that was before Amendment 41, and I know that they had quite a few meetings over at the bar across the street, Capitol Grill. Again, it was before Amendment 41. And I served with Ken, enjoyed it, but one other funny story I will tell you about Ken, and I heard this secondhand. When he was running for county commissioner the first time, he got on the ballot by petition. And he was going around in his district, at that time is fairly large because it's a rural district, and he needed X number of signatures, and he was working very hard to get them. And he went to one person's house and asked for their signature, and the woman of the house said, "Well, I'm sorry, but my husband is in bed." And Ken said, "That's no problem." He followed his wife into the house, into the bedroom, and he got his signature. Ken was a great person. He was a true gentleman. I enjoyed serving with him both in the House and the Senate. He will be missed. Colorado has lost a great, great person, and my condolences to the family. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Talktrup. Senator Ward.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I served, probably of anyone here, I served with Ken the shortest period of time, just a few years, so I'll probably talk the longest. Just an altogether decent individual. If I had to describe Ken Kester, you just have to say he was just an altogether decent individual, a gentleman to the core. And I want to echo what Senator Foster said. When you come here from local government, as some of us did, you can't hide in local government. Ideological divides don't work. Ideological viewpoints don't work. You can't hide when you're on a board of 3 or a board of 5 or a board of 7. You have to govern, you got to balance your budgets, and you just can't vote no and go home, because if you do, you're going to get throttled by your colleagues pretty quick and fairly often. And you could tell that with Ken. He came up from local government. And Josh, I remember the Pinyon Canyon fight. And he was passionate about it, because there were so many conflicts in that fight between what we needed for the military and what we needed for his district and what we needed for rural Colorado. When you come from local government and you get into those kinds of issues, your goal is to solve the problem. And Ken was always looking for ways to solve the problem. An altogether decent individual. I'll leave you with this. As the junior guy in the chamber when I got here, it was tough to get his vote. But when you had it, you knew you had it. Just a gentleman to the core. We will miss him here. I think the state of Colorado will miss his approach to governing the state of Colorado. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members, for your time.
Thank you, Senator Ward. Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. Good to be here today, actually on this sad occasion. And when I first think about Ken, to me, he was my go-to person. Whenever I needed a vote, I would go to him first. And we had a great relationship. All the accolades, all the adjectives that have described him are Ken Kester. As you can see by the crowd of has-beens that are sitting on the sides, we not only enjoyed working with him, admired him, again, all the adjectives. One has not been used, and I would say, if you wrap them all up, all the adjectives, all the descriptions, I would say he was the outstanding diplomat of the chamber and really of the legislature of Colorado. As you heard, he goes back and forth, he goes across the aisles, he was a friend to many, and he was an outstanding family man, as has been mentioned. He was so proud of his boys, as he called you, and he loved you, and he is with us today in spirit, and we will always remember him as the family man and as the diplomat, the go-to person. Thank you.
Representative Coleman, would you like to speak? Welcome to the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President, and it's a pleasure and an honor and also a sad occasion to speak to this august body and those that served with me and after me. Ken, I think many of you have all said it, not I think, I know. He was always smiling. He was always a gentleman, and I say it as a woman. He never treated me differently. He was respectful, he was honorable, and I always really appreciated that because there were others that weren't that way. And the biggest thing that and Lois brought it up, or Senator Toktrop brought it up, and that was the Prairie Bill. I actually served with him on the Agriculture Committee. What happened at the time is Ken Gordon, who was the minority leader, came to me and said, "I'm putting you on the Agriculture Committee." And I said, "You are?" And he goes, "Yeah, we need one Denver person that knows what it's like to be in agriculture," because he knew I'd grown up in Weld County. So the biggest and newest bill that we had, and Ken and I came in together along with Lois and Ann Ragsdale, and that was our first year. So we debated that Prairie Bill. It was crazy. And as a Denverite, I felt like I had 1 foot in Denver and 1 foot in agriculture, but mostly in agriculture. And he really fought for that bill, and it was a lot of fun. Some of the jokes that were around the prairie dogs, I can't even remember them all. But to this day, Ken, because I know you're in the room with us, every time I go by a prairie dog community, I always think of you. I've always done that when you were living, and I will continue to think of you as I go by the prairie dog communities. The other way I know Ken was actually personally through his son, Dan. Dan was the manager and the head over at the King Super Credit Union, and our Democratic House district always used to meet there. And so it was always cool to catch up with Ken through his son, even while he was still here serving with me, and then later when I was serving as a lobbyist. I always knew what was going on with the Kesters. And you know what? Dan also emulated what his father raised, and he has a great son, and I'm sure your other 2 brothers are the same. I, too, was very sad when I heard about Ken. I wanted to go down and be with you, but I couldn't. But Ken, know that we love you, and rest in peace.
Thank you, Representative Coleman. I do believe that I have recognized everybody, have I not? The Senate will come back to order. Mr. President. Let me add Senator Hill to the roll, please. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, thank you. Former colleagues, thank you for all those words and the reminder given of what Ken meant to us as colleagues, as a friend. Some great memories there. I was thinking during a couple of these moments, I appreciate the words, Senator Penry, that Ken would be proud to know that his successor had become president. I think Ken would be more proud to know that we were fighting for rural Colorado, Senator Crowder and I. And I hope that we measure up to what Ken fought for when it comes to rural Colorado. I hope that Senator Crowder and I can fight half as hard as he did in regard to things like Pinyon Canyon, and we certainly have tried. I will point out, though, that Senator Crowder did mention to me that Senator Kester had a GM dealership, I believe, and Crowder mentioned that he's a Chevy man, so I'm sure Kester would be proud of that. I'm a Ford man, so I'm afraid I might be a disappointment in that regard. Colleagues, thank you again. If the measure of a man is the friends that he has here today to remember him, then Ken Kester was a mountain of a man. And I thank you for your words today. Mr. President, I renew our motion for the passage of Senate Joint Memorial 6. I ask for a roll call vote and that the chimes ring out in honor of our friend and Senator Ken Kester.
The chimes will indeed ring out. Mr. Carpenter, please poll the senators.
Senators Aguilar. Aguilar, aye. Baumgardner. Baumgardner, aye. Cook. Cook, aye. Quorum. Quorum, aye. Court. Court, aye. Crowder.
Aye.
Crowder, aye. Donovan. Donovan, aye. Finberg. Finberg, aye. Fields. Fields, aye. Garcia. Garcia, aye. Gardner. Gardner, aye. Guzman. Guzman, aye. Hill. Hill, aye. Holbert. Holbert, aye. John. John, aye. Jones. Jones, aye. Kagan. Kagan, aye. Kafalis. Kafalis, aye. Kerr. Kerr, aye. Lambert. Lambert, aye. Lumberg. Lumberg, aye. Marble. Marble, aye. Martinez-Humenick. Martinez-Humenick, aye. Merrifield. Merrifield, aye. Moreno. Moreno, aye. Neville. Neville, aye. Priola. Priola, aye. Scott. Scott, aye. Smallwood. Smallwood, aye. Tate. Tate, aye. Todd. Todd, aye. Williams. Williams, aye. Zinzinger. Zinzinger, aye. President Grantham.
Aye.
President Grantham, aye. Senator Anderson. Senator Anderson, aye. Senator Brophy. Senator Brophy, aye. Senator Foster. Senator Foster, aye. Senator Hagedorn. Senator Hagedorn, aye. Senator Hernandez. Senator Hernandez, aye. Senator Hillman. Senator Hillman, aye. Senator Jones. Senator Jones, aye. Senator Keller. Senator Keller, aye. Senator King. Senator King, aye. Senator Kopp. Senator Kopp, aye. Senator Penry. Senator Penry, aye. Senator Schroeder. Senator Schroeder, aye. Senator Spence. Senator Spence, aye. Senator Stedman. Senator Stedman, aye. Senator Talkdrop. Senator Talkdrop, aye. Senator Ward. Senator Ward, aye. Senator Williams. Senator Williams, aye. President Fitzgerald. President Fitzgerald, aye. Mr. President.
Aye.
Mr. President, aye.
With 53 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Joint Memorial 6 is adopted. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like your permission, if there is no objection, to add the current roll call as co-sponsors.
Without objection, the current roll call will indeed be added as co-sponsors. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, please be seated. I would like to just briefly introduce the family that was able to be here today. Many of you know him and mentioned him, but I would like you to help me welcome Dan Kester to the Senate chamber today. Dan. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Senate will stand in a brief recess.
The Senate will come back to order. At least that's what I thought, yeah. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to Senate Joint Memorial 7?
Senate Joint Memorial 007 by Senators Lambert and Fields and Representatives Landgraf and Lee, memorializing Congress and the United States Army to stand up a new Armored Brigade Combat Team by transitioning an Infantry Brigade Combat Team stationed at Fort Carson into an Armored Brigade Combat Team to be stationed at Fort Carson.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move Senate Joint Memorial 007 and ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Carpenter.
Won't be too long.
Senate Joint Memorial 007 by Senators Lambert and Fields and Representatives Landgraf and Lee, memorializing Congress and the United States Army to stand up a new Armored Brigade Combat Team by transitioning an Infantry Brigade Combat Team stationed at Fort Carson into an Armored Brigade Combat Team to be stationed at Fort Carson. Whereas the United States Army must be ready at all times to respond to global crisis, both with regard to near-peer nations such as Russia and to rogue regimes that harbor terrorism. And whereas, as part of fulfilling its mission, in fiscal year 2019, the United States Army plans to increase its active Armored Brigade Combat Team, ABCT, capacity by 1 brigade, from 15 to 16 brigades in total, and further plans to station this new ABCT at an existing Army installation in the continental U.S. And whereas, a programmatic environmental assessment conducted by the Army considered and analyzed 5 alternatives for the creation of the new ABCT, including an option that would convert the current 2nd Infantry Brigade Combat Team, IBCT, 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson into the 16th ABCT to be stationed at Fort Carson. And whereas converting the existing unit at Fort Carson from an IBCT to an ABCT and stationing that ABCT at Fort Carson is the most cost-effective and responsible way to stand up the new unit. Fort Carson would not require new construction or significant renovation to house the ABCT, as the facilities already boast the infrastructure required for sustaining the unit. Fort Carson's training sites are unrivaled, and because the Army conducted an environmental impact statement on the installation in 2015, there would be no need for an additional costly assessment. And whereas community support in the state of Colorado for Fort Carson and its mission, personnel, and families is unmatched. Fort Carson is consistently among the top requested posts for Army families and personnel, and Colorado remains one of the most desirable places to train, work, live, and retire in the nation. And whereas Fort Carson and the state of Colorado stand proud and prepared to continue to serve the nation to our fullest capability, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 71st General Assembly of the state of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the General Assembly of the state of Colorado, along with Colorado's governor and its entire bipartisan congressional delegation, strongly urge the Secretary of the Army to stand up the Army's 16th Armored Brigade Combat Team at Fort Carson through the conversion of an Infantry Brigade Combat Team to an Armored Brigade Combat Team to be stationed at Fort Carson. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint memorial be sent to Governor John Hickenlooper, General Mark A. Milley, Chief of Staff of the Army, Mark Esper, Secretary of the Army, General Laurie J. Robinson, Commander, United States Northern Command, Major General Randy A. George, Commander, 4th Infantry Division, Major General Michael A. Lowe, Adjutant General, State of Colorado, and Colorado's congressional delegation.
Senator Lambert.
Members, you can stand at parade rest. No, you can be seated.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I am a daughter of a soldier, and I got to Colorado through Fort Carson. My dad was stationed at Fort Carson, and we lived in military housing on Fort Carson. So when I think about the rich history of Fort Carson, it was founded in 1942, right after the Japanese attacked on Pearl Harbor. It's known as the best hometown in the Army because of its scenery in Colorado Springs. Since 2003, it has hosted so many different units, such as the Army Reserve, the Navy Reserve, and of course the Colorado Army National Guard. So I'm pleased to be a part of this memorial joint resolution to acknowledge the continuation of service and opportunity for our nation through Fort Carson.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you. And the Senator from Arapahoe County is absolutely correct. Fort Carson has gone through a lot of changes in its history, starting with Camp Carson. But the change is an interesting part of the history of Fort Carson because, as you know, the 10th Mountain Division originally started at Fort Carson, although they did their training up in the mountains. I think when I was first visited Fort Carson, the 5th Infantry Division was there. That was in 1970. I was actually on active duty and had a little orientation program down at Fort Carson. And interestingly, one of the things that sticks in my memory was some tanks down there, and part of the demonstration we had was, and this was a bunch of Air Force Academy cadets. I think I was in basic training at the time, but they put us out in a little place in the field, and all of a sudden 3 tanks showed up and surrounded us and demonstrated. You did not want to get into a contest with 3 tanks. At that time, I think they were M48s. They were some of the older, almost Korean War vintage tanks. And since that time, Fort Carson has greatly upgraded. They've, of course, tremendously different modernization since then. I'm proud that my nephew, Charlie Simpich, actually was assigned down at Fort Carson, went through Fort Knox Tank School, and arrived at Fort Carson. They promptly took away his tank and handed him a rifle and trained him to go to Afghanistan, which he didn't actually do. But the mission has changed and evolved over time. I mention that because this is a major change in the mission of Fort Carson. We think of an infantry division. Right now, the 4th Infantry Division is down there, but in a classic Army, what they call table of organization equipment, generally there's about half and half infantry and armored units in a traditional infantry division. This will bring them up to that level of training. I think it will be a long-standing change to the mission of Fort Carson, and this is really sort of a historical moment. And we were asked by our senatorial delegation, U.S. senatorial delegation, to be so kind as to memorialize this time, and that's why we have 007. Also, it's a cool number, so I'm glad we got 007 as the joint memorial number. But I would ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion? Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too stand. I'd be remiss if I didn't stand in support of Senate Joint Memorial 007. I had the opportunity to spend many weekends down at Fort Carson when I was attached with Quebec Battery, which is an artillery unit here at Buckley Air Force Base, but many weekends doing fire exercises down there at Fort Carson. Say that we appreciate the value Fort Carson brings us, not only the state, but especially in southern Colorado and Pueblo. Many reside in Pueblo West or in Pueblo, but spend their time, full-time duty there at Fort Carson, and have found the cost of living and the lack of congestion and that to be of benefit in Pueblo. So I think adding these additional opportunities to Fort Carson only benefit southern Colorado, and I stand in support of this resolution.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 7. Are there any no votes? With
007.
I get it. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Joint Memorial 7 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Senator Lambert.
Thank you. I would move that the current roll call be added on as co-sponsors on Senate Joint Memorial 7.
Without objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on Memorial 7. Thank you, Senators. Third reading of bills, final passage, consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the titles to all the bills on the consent calendar?
House Bill 1314 by Representatives Janal and Lawrence and Senator Cook concerning prohibiting the use of unmanned aircraft systems to obstruct public safety operations. House Bill 1269 by Representatives Lundin and Pedersen and Senator Hill and Fields concerning notification to parents of charges brought against public school employees for alleged felony offenses that would result in revocation of an educator license pursuant to Title 22 Colorado Revised Statutes. House Bill 1342 by Representatives Melton and Senator Todd concerning requirement that a common interest community created in Colorado before July 1st, 1992 comply with the provision of the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act that allow a majority of the unit owners in a common interest community to veto a budget proposed by the executive board of the common interest community. House Bill 1354 by Representative McKean and Senator Zinzinger concerning a requirement that written warranties for power sports vehicles be honored. House Bill 1346 by Representative Singer and Landgraf and Senator Smallwood and Cafalas concerning child abuse related to youth who are under the continuing jurisdiction of the court in an out-of-home placement when they are younger than 21 years of age. House Bill 1302 by Representatives Janal and Landgraf and Senator Marble concerning the allowance of the Department of Public Health and Environment to waive certification requirements for toxicology laboratories that have been accredited by an entity using recognized forensic standards.
Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bills listed on the third reading of bills consent calendar, House Bills 1314, 1269, 1342, 1354, 1346, and 1302.
Is there any discussion? Is there any further discussion on any of the bills on the consent calendar? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of all the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes? Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 18-1269.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to be recorded as a no vote on 1269.
Are there any further no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1314 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Kagan, Senator Crowder, Senator Lambert, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Gardner, Senator Tate, Senator Cook, Senator Priola, Senator Smallwood, Senator Scott, Senator Jones, with 33 ayes, 2 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1269 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Senator Crowder, Senator Lambert, Senator Tate, Senator Smallwood, Senator Priola, Senator Scott, Senator Neville, Senator Gardner, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Cook, Senator Moreno, please add the President, and Senator Cafalas, and Senator John. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1342 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Moreno, Senator Kagan, Senator Tate. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1354 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Kagan, Leader Garcia, Senator Tate, Senator Todd. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1346 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Crowder, Senator Tate, Leader Garcia, Senator Fields, Senator Jones, Senator Zinzinger, Senator Moreno, Senator Court, Senator Merrifield, Senator Kerr, Senator Todd, Senator Williams, Senator Aguilar, Senator Martinez-Humenick, With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1302 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Tate. Third reading of bills, final passage. Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask to be added as a co-sponsor on 1314.
Senator Kerr will be added as a co-sponsor on 1314. Third reading of bills. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 268?
Senate Bill 268 by Senator Scott Moreno and Representative McLaughlin concerning the scope of the authority of the Department of Transportation to award a design bid build highway project contract in an amount that exceeds the estimate of the department on the project.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move Senate Bill 268 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to explain my no vote on this. Right now, the way it's set up, if a contract is under $1 million, the state has the ability. What happens? The state will set up a cost analysis of a project, and if that's under $1 million, what will happen? There will be a representative from the executive director of CDOT that would approve up to 10% overage. What this bill does is give a situation where they can, under the same circumstances, they can go 25% over. I'm of the belief that we've been building roads for a long time and we ought to know what it costs. So in order for us to go 25% over that bid for projects under $1 million, I think is not to the advantage of the state, the contractor, or the people, the taxpayers. I do believe that this goes beyond the scope of what we're trying to do, and that's minimize and make sure that we are very efficient government, so therefore I will be a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I just want to assure you this is actually just an extension of an existing law that has helped CDOT get shovel-ready projects out the door.
Any further discussion? Motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 268. Are there any no votes? Senator Crowder. Senator Jones. With 33 ayes, 2 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 268 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Cook. Senator Tate. Senator John. Senator Priola. Senator Martinez-Humenick. Senator Kafalis. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 269?
Senate Bill 269 by Senators Neville and Moreno and Representatives Neville and Bridges concerning providing funding for local education providers to implement school security improvements to prevent incidents of school violence and in connection therewith creating the school security disbursement program.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move Senate Bill 269 on third and final reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 269. Are there any no votes? 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused. Senate Bill 269 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Scott. Senator Priola. Senator Smallwood. Senator Tate. Senator Lambert. Senator Martinez-Humenick. Senator Lundberg. Senator Marble. Senator Cook. Senator Hill. Senator Crowder. Senator Baumgardner. Senator Gardner. Senator Sonnenberg. Leader Garcia. Senator Kafalis, Senator Jones, Senator Fields, Senator Court, Senator Fenberg, Senator Aguilar, Senator John, Senator Merrifield, Senator Todd, Senator Williams, Senator Guzman, Senator Coram, Senator Kerr, Senator Donovan, Senator Kagan. Please add the president. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to House Bill 1286?
House Bill 1286 by Representative Roberts and Senators Aguilar and Marble concerning allowing school personnel to give medical marijuana to a student with a medical marijuana registry card while at school.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move for the adoption of House Bill 1286 on third reading and final passage and ask for the use of the present roll call.
Is there any further discussion? Motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1286. Are there any no votes? Senator Priola, Senator Martinez-Shimenick, Senator Gardner, Senator Cook, Senator Hill, with 30 ayes, 5 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1286 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Crowder, Senator Merrifield, Senator Kerr, Senator Todd, Senator Kafalis, Senator Guzman, Senator Moreno, Senator Neville, Senator Tate, Senator Baumgardner, Senator John, Senator Jones, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1263.
House Bill 1263 by Representatives Hooten and Melton and Senators Quorum and Finberg concerning adding certain conditions to the list of disabling medical conditions for medical marijuana use in connection with adding autism spectrum disorders.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move House Bill 1263 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion? Motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1263. Are there any no votes? Senator Cook, Senator Gardner, Senator Priola. With 32 ayes, 3 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1263 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Aguilar, Senator Williams, Senator Todd, Senator Moreno, Senator Guzman, Senator Kafalis, Senator Fields, Senator Marble, Senator Neville, Senator Crowder, Senator Martinez-Shimenick, Senator Kerr, Senator Tate. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to House Bill 1313?
House Bill 1313 by Representatives Janal and Becker J. and Senators Aguilar and Priola concerning the allowance of a pharmacist to serve as a practitioner under certain circumstances.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1313 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion? Motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1313. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1313 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Tate, Senator Gardner, Senator Crowder, Senator Marble, Senator John, Senator Todd, Senator Kafalis, Senator Fields, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Merrifield. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 243.
Senate Bill 243 by Senators Holbert and Guzman, Representatives Escar and McKean concerning the retail sale of alcohol beverages in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 243 on third reading and final passage. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 243. Are there any no votes? Senator Cook, Senator Hill, Senator Neville, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Gardner, Senator Priola, Senator Kerr, Senator Smallwood, Senator Tate, please add the President. With 24 ayes, 11 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 243 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Marble. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1184.
House Bill 1184 by Representatives Exum and Lawrence and Senators Aguilar and Gardner concerning the creation of a report on 911 service in Colorado in connection with requiring the consideration of issues related to the implementation of the Next Generation 911.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move for the adoption of House Bill 1184 on third reading and final passage and ask for the use of the current roll call.
And thank you for the use of the proper motion on third reading, Senator Aguilar. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1184? Motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1184. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1184 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Jones, Senator Kerr, Senator Smallwood, Senator Tate, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Cook, Senator Crowder, Senator Hill, General orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar, Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar.
Motion before the body is for the Senate to resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the general order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the general order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Senator Smallwood will take the chair.
Committee will come to order. The court rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title of all the bills on the general order, second reading of bills, consent calendar?
House Bill 1108 by Representative Danielson and Senator Todd, concerning the Colorado Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and in connection therewith renaming the Commission the Colorado Commission for the Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deafblind, creating the Colorado Deafblind Citizens Council to advise the Commission on deafblind issues, clarifying and expanding the Commission's duties to provide services to the deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind, and changing the membership of the committee charged with reviewing grant applications. House Bill 1136 by Representative Pedersen and Senator Perola and John, concerning the treatment for individuals with substance use disorders in connection therewith, adding residential and inpatient treatment to the Colorado Medical Assistance Program and making an appropriation. House Bill 1189 by Representative Pedersen and Senators Hill and Todd, concerning pilot programs to expand effective teacher residency programs across the state and in connection therewith making an appropriation. Senate Bill 271 by Senator Marble and Representative Pabon, concerning changes to improve funding for marijuana research.
Majority Leader Holbert. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There has been a request to remove House Bill 1189 from the consent calendar, so 1189 will be removed and placed at the end of general orders, second reading of bills. Mr. Chairman, I move the remaining bills listed on the general order, second reading of bills consent calendar, House Bill 1108, along with the committee report from Health and Human Services, House Bill 1136, and the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report, and Senate Bill 271, along with the Finance and Appropriations Committee reports. Is there any discussion on any of the committee reports? Seeing none, the motion for the body is adoption of all the committee reports on the general order, second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee reports are adopted. Is there any discussion on any of the bills on the general order, second reading of bills consent calendar? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of all the bills on the general order, second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Those bills pass. Majority Leader Holbert. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report. Motion for the body is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We'll rise and report.
Senate will come back to order. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Mr. President, your committee's met, had a number of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee holds lead reports out on consideration of the following tax bills, bills, and thereof makes the following recommendations on Senate Bill 271 is amended past second read order, grows place and calendar for the reading and final passage. House Bill 1108 is amended. House Bill 1136 is amended past second read order, revised, place calendar for the reading and final passage. House Bill 1189 removed from the general order, second reading of bills consent calendar, placed at the end of the general order, second reading of bills calendar for 5/118.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the report.
Motion before the body is the adoption of the report to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 271 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1108 is amended. House Bill 1136 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1189, removed from the general order second reading of bills consent calendar and placed at the end of the general order second reading of bills calendar for 5/1/18. General order second reading of bills. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate resolve itself in the committee of the whole for consideration of general order second reading of bills.
Motion for the body is for the Senate to resolve itself into the committee of the whole for consideration of the general order second reading of bills calendar. All those in favor, say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself into the committee of the whole for consideration of the general orders second reading of bills calendar, and Senator Smallwood will take the chair.
Committee will come back to order. Court rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title of the Senate bill? Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to lay over Senate Bill 241 to the end of the second reading's calendar to follow House Bill 1189.
Motion for the body is to lay over Senate Bill 241 to the bottom of the general order second reading of bills calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 241 will lay over. Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the request of this bill sponsor, I move to lay over Senate Bill 245 to Wednesday, May 2nd.
Motion for the body is to lay over Senate Bill 245 until Wednesday, May 2nd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 245 will lay over until Wednesday, May 2nd. Will the clerk please read the title, House Bill 1003?
House Bill 1003 by Representative Pedersen and Senators Priola and John concerning measures to prevent opioid misuse in Colorado in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1003.
There's committee reports, I believe, Senator.
The Finance and Appropriations Committee report. And State Veterans and Military Affairs.
Senator, I believe it's just the State Veterans and Military Affairs and Appropriations?
Correct.
Great. To the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report.
Members, we added an amendment in State Affairs that removed some money that was spent on a program. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, in appropriations, we added back some money. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, motion for the body is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill. Senator John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, this is one of the bills that came out of the interim committee when we did the study on the opioid and substance use disorders. This bill has moved forward, and there has only been one no vote, so we're very excited about that. And basically what this bill will do is allow us to move forward on continuing to bring all of the issues to the table, the stakeholders to the table, continuing the interim committee so that we can continue working on these programs. And I believe we're going to have one amendment.
There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read the title to Amendment 32?
Amendment L032 to House Bill 1003 by Senator Lambert.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L032.
To the committee, to the amendment, Senator Lambert.
Thank you. And members, I was the vice chair of this during the interim. I do support 1003, but there were a couple of things that I thought needed to be expanded. One of the things that the committee is allowed to do in the future, right now under the under the bill, is to compare Colorado's program.
Colleagues, please.
Compare Colorado's program with other states and other countries, but they forgot the United States government, which has a lot of opioid programs, and they're putting, I don't know, $6 billion worth of effort into it. So I wanted to change that to add United States government to some of the programs they should be comparing the state government to. Also, I wanted to expand the topics that the committee can look at in the future, including some of the criminal justice, law enforcement, like jail-based types of programs, diversion programs, other technologies that might be useful for law enforcement, and that's the amendment.
Senator John.
Thank you, and we do take this as a friendly amendment. One of the things that we were not able to get to when we did the last interim were exactly these things. And so I know that the good senator from El Paso County has waited, now it'll be a year, for us to have this, but it's time for us to bring everybody back into the committee, and this should definitely be included. So I would ask for an aye vote on L32.
Seeing no further discussion, Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill is very important for opioid crisis the coming 2 years. Besides having some money for education, it will continue the discussion. This issue is not going to be solved just in this legislative session, and we're going to have to tweak things we've passed, as well as we're going to have to bring up bills in the future to address new discovery, and this is a method for that discovery. Ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1003.
Motion for the body is the adoption of Amendment 32. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendment 32 is adopted. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1003? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of House Bill 1003. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1003 passes. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1266?
House Bill 1266 by Representatives Escar and Wilson and Senators Hill and Todd concerning expanding the Career Development Success Pilot Program.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we move House Bill 1289 on second. And
Senator, I think we're on 1266.
excuse me, 1266. Pardon me, 1266.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1266? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of House Bill 1266. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1266 passes. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1379?
House Bill 1379 by Representatives Patterson and Wilson and Senators Hill concerning
Majority Leader Holbert.
financing of public schools
Thank
in
you, Mr.
connection with
Chairman.
making appropriation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to lay over House Bill 1379 till Wednesday, May 2nd.
Motion for the body is to lay over House Bill 1379 until Wednesday, May 2nd. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The aye has it. House Bill 1379 will lay over until Wednesday, May 2nd. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 13?
Senate Bill 13 by Senators Fields and Gardner, Representatives Michelson and Janae concerning expanding the grids eligible for the Child Nutrition School Lunch Protection Program.
Senator Gardner. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 13, and I'm just checking to see if there's a...
Should be...
And the Appropriations Report.
To the Appropriations Committee report, Senator.
Thank you. We added an appropriation that was appropriate for the appropriation, and I ask for an aye vote on the Appropriations Report.
Any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, motion for the body is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We move Senate Bill 18013 with a favorable recommendation. We ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 13? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 13. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 13 passes. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 260?
Senate Bill 260 by Senator Hill concerning implementing a sunrise review of new educational services under the Private Occupational School Division of the Department of Higher Education.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 260 along with the Education, Finance, and Appropriations Committee reports.
To the Education Committee report, Senator.
So, colleagues, on basically the Education Committee report, we clarified a couple of technical amendments here, just making very clear, putting guidelines on DPOS and the Sunrise process that they were going to be implementing for regulation of new private schools.
Seeing no further discussion, motion for the body is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Education Committee report is adopted. To the Finance Committee report, Senator Hill.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Finance Committee report, we just further clarified that and the financial implications.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion on the Finance Committee report, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Finance Committee report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report, Senator.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. On the appropriations report, we appropriated $100,000 to DPOS to deal with a new FTE that they are going to be required in order to implement the Sunrise process that we're proposing in Senate Bill 260.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion for the body is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report to Senate Bill 260. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Hill.
Colleagues, Senate Bill 260 is we're working on a fundamental shift about how we think about regulation of private occupational schools as we as a body have really shifted our focus and recognized a variety of different educational opportunities for students. We know private occupational schools are going to play an increasingly important role, and the way the law is written right now is if money changes hands for some kind of training, they fall under regulation for DPOS, and so it's an automatically they shall regulate unless they can opt out of it. We're shifting that now and saying, no, they have to prove a case to the consumer and go through the Sunrise process that we're all very familiar with here to start regulation of new schools. And just to, you know what I'm talking about here, right? We've got some of the ones that we think about, some of the medical training schools, some of that, but lately we've been, fly fishing guide schools have received letters that they are going to fall under DPOS regulation. We remember from a few years ago the yoga regulations, so we're trying to avoid having to go and cut out all of these in the future and make a stronger process for opting in to new regulation. Colleagues, ask for your support.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 260. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 260 passes. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1189?
House Bill 1189 by Representatives Pedersen, Size, Senators Hill and Todd concerning the pilot programs to expand effective teacher residency programs across the state in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we move House Bill 1189, and we do have, let's see, and the Education and Appropriations Committee report.
To the Education Committee report, Senator Todd.
To the Education Committee report, there was basically no change. It was just simply passing the bill for expanding effective teacher residency program.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Education Committee report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report, Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for the Appropriations Committee report, it basically is allocating $600,000 out of general fund to cover the expenses of the bill.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion for the body is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report to House Bill 1189. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator Hill.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, colleagues. Very briefly, this is just a continuation of a program that we've seen a lot of success on. This is not us telling the school districts what they have to do in terms of expanding out some of their course offerings, but incentivizing them. If there's a student, say, in your class that wants to go get Apple certified or Microsoft SQL certified, or they want to get another certification that they feel compelled to, rather than the government and our districts creating this program, rather we're paying the school district back for them to go to outside providers to get these certification programs for the students. It's done a great job so far, and ask for your support. Mr. Chair, we do have a technical amendment, Amendment 3.
Will the clerk please read the title to Amendment 3?
Amendment L003 House Bill 1189 by Senator Hill, Memory and Gross Bill page 999.
Senator Hill.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment 3. Colleagues, Amendment 3 just clarifies that this is not one program but multiple programs, and not multiple contracts but one contract. So I ask for your support on that.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 3? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of Amendment 3. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendment 3 is adopted. Any further discussion on House Bill 1189? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of House Bill 1189. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1189 passes. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 241?
Senate Bill 241 by Senator Lumberg and Representative Humphrey concerning the establishment of the Colorado Children First Act in Colorado.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 241 and the Appropriations Committee report.
To the committee report, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee report from the Appropriations is appropriating $12,787 for the implementation of Senate Bill 241. I ask for the adoption of the report.
Seeing no further, is there discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Senator Court. Seeing no further discussion, the motion for the body is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report to Senate Bill 241. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Lundberg.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill is concerning allowing adoption agencies and foster care agencies to exercise their freedom of conscience and their religious liberties in determining how they conduct their business as an adoption agency or foster care agency. I ask for its favorable approval.
Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, we had a lot of discussion about this in committee, and a great deal of the conversation focused on concerns that this would allow for a kind of discrimination in the process of adoption and foster care. And while the good senator from Berthoud disagreed with my characterization of it that way, I still see that this is an opportunity to allow for people who are running adoption agencies to say that they will not work with people of a certain sort, whatever that might be, because of their own, the adoption agency's moral convictions. And I likened it to someone who provides Section 8 housing and gets government subsidies to do Section 8 housing and says, yes, we're going to do Section 8 housing, but we won't rent to fill in the blank. And that's the concern that I have and that many of the people who came to testify have about the way this bill is presented. So I urge a no vote because we do not want any kind of choosing within adoption and foster care agencies that are working with the government to place children in the best homes possible. Thank you.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge a no vote on Senate Bill 241 because as I read the bill, there's one question that comes to my mind is, where is the empathy in this bill? How are we prioritizing our children in this bill? Have you had an opportunity to read this bill and what it does? Look at what it says. It says that leading legal scholars concur there's a conflict between same-sex marriages and religious liberties. And they're real, and they should be addressed through this legislation. So what this bill is aimed to do, it's aimed to create a license to discriminate based on your sexual orientation or based on your religious belief. Now, I am a woman of faith, and I can tell you what my faith teaches. It does not teach discrimination. Religion should not be used as an excuse to discriminate. But that's exactly what this bill does. I think that is the wrong way to be going when we look at so many kids that are stuck in foster care situation, and we have loving adults that want to adopt them. We're going to say that you can't adopt a child that is in need of a home because of their religious preference or because of the belief as it relates to same-sex marriages. That's already been litigated at the Supreme Court. It's legal for same-sex marriages to exist in the United States, in Colorado. How dare we look at legislation that's going to prevent those folks who want to adopt a child? This legislation is going to say no because of the structure of what the religious beliefs are for a church or what have you. That's discrimination. And I believe that we should be securing safety, well-being for our children. And why are we at the state level trying to introduce legislation that would interfere with a child being adopted? Do you know how many kids are looking for homes? And how we're trying to pair kids up to people who want to adopt kids? This bill is a license to discriminate. Read it. Read the bill. This bill will have huge consequences. It could even impact federal dollars that we get because of someone's religious belief that we think you shouldn't have access to adopt kids. This bill is just too extreme. This is not what Colorado is all about. The spirit of Colorado is about acceptance. It's about fairness. It's about equality. And this bill does none of that. Vote no on Senate Bill 241.
Sir. Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I took a look at this bill, a long look at this bill, and it brought back a personal memory. Had an employee who was in a very abusive marriage. The marriage broke up. Children involved. She became involved in a lesbian relationship. I personally witnessed how much better those children did in that relationship rather than what some people want to call the normal marriage. I can't in good conscience vote for this bill. I listened this morning to a memorial, and my thought was, what would Senator Kester think about this bill? Children deserve a strong, loving relationship. To me, it doesn't matter if it's two mothers or if it's two fathers. If the love is there to show those children how to be good citizens and responsible people, I ask for a no vote.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish to read into the record a letter that I received from the Anti-Defamation League urging a no vote on this bill. It says, Dear Senator Zenzinger, on behalf of the Anti-Defamation League, Mountain States Region, we urge you to oppose Senate Bill 241, the Colorado Children First Act. For more than 100 years, the Anti-Defamation League has strongly advocated for religious freedom for all Americans, regardless of whether they are in the majority or the minority. And as a leading civil rights organization, ADL is also dedicated to combating discrimination and ensuring equality, justice, and civil rights for all. Senate Bill 241 broadly empowers child placement agencies receiving taxpayer-funded grants or contracts to discriminate on the basis of religious belief or moral conviction. As a result, such agencies could refuse to place a child for adoption or foster care with an otherwise qualified couple or individual based upon their sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, race, or status as an interracial or interreligious couple. The bill would prohibit the state from denying funding or contracts to agencies that choose to discriminate. And in doing so, the bill effectively would allow and even require publicly funded discrimination. Neither Colorado nor its taxpayers should be supporting discrimination, and the publicly funded discrimination authorized by SB 241 is not only grossly unfair, but in certain instances will likely violate federal laws. For example, a child placement agency refusing to place a child with an otherwise qualified African American, interracial, Jewish, Arab, or Chinese couple would likely violate 42 U.S.C. of 1981, regardless of whether the provider receives public funding. Additionally, a provider receiving significant government support could violate Colorado's equal protection clauses by denying services based on race, religion, gender, or national origin. And finally, SB 241 prevents the state from taking action against a person who has custody of a foster or adoptive child or is seeking custody if the person claims to guide, instruct, or raise a child or intends to in a manner consistent with a sincerely held religious belief or moral conviction, with an exception that it does not imminently and seriously endanger minors' physical health. This makes it impossible for the state to act in the best interest of the child unless they were to come into serious physical harm. In light of these serious policy and legal issues, we urge you to oppose this legislation. Sincerely, Scott Levin, the Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League. And colleagues, I would just like to say that I really appreciated the perspective of this organization, considering that they are such strong advocates for religious freedom for all Americans. And I, too, would like to encourage a no vote for Senate Bill 241.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Loving parents are loving parents, and Senate Bill 241 hurts my soul, and I ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 241. Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I just cannot let this occur without my personal remarks. My personal remarks as a gay person have always been political as well. There's no distinguishing part here. This session, as a person representing the LGBT community, I've had to listen to a bill that wants to convert gay, lesbian, BLT children to help give therapists the right to unmake who they are, to unmake who they've been born to be. And now on top of that, we have this bill that says that our people are not adequately prepared or don't hold what it needs to be, what we need to hold to be good parents. I take huge political issue with this and huge personal issue with this. And as an ordained pastor, I take even more issue with giving opportunity to protect. Even though legally religious organizations do have a right in many ways, they cannot be sued for making their decisions. But as an ordained pastor, I take huge issue with this bill. And I believe it is up to the state and the church to call this bill into question and defeat this bill and give adequate opportunities for not only the LGBT community, but for all communities, all people. I remember someone telling me one time that one of the priests at the university here in Denver, the Catholic University, that the priests cannot be good parents because they've never had a child before. That would be like saying a school teacher who's never had a child cannot be a good school teacher. Gay, lesbian, transgendered, bisexual people deserve the right because we are human beings. We deserve the right that everyone else in this country, in this nation, and this world has. I urge an extreme hard no vote on this bill.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before a vote is held, I just want to explain what the bill does. And I'm not going to try to, at this time, challenge anything that was said, except to simply explain what the bill does. And that is, if you look on pages 6 and 7, mostly 7, that's the real action of the bill, which is to provide protection for adoption and foster care providers. We're talking about adoption agencies and foster care agencies. They're private organizations, and there are, I think, some 200, if I recall correctly, adoption agencies in the state, and a handful of them, like maybe a dozen or 15, are faith-based. And many of those have standards as to who they will work with according to their religious faith or their moral convictions. And that's what the bill states, it's very clear. The state government shall not take any discriminatory action against a person that advertises, provides, or facilitates adoption or foster care. I'll just continue reading. Wholly or partly on the basis that such person has provided or declined to provide any adoption or foster care service or related service based on or in a manner consistent with a sincerely held religious belief or moral conviction. That's all the bill really does, is it states that the person involved in that agency providing that service can live within the structure of their sincerely held religious belief or moral conviction. Now that's the first part. The second part of the bill applies the very same standard to the state government shall not take any discriminatory action against a person who the state grants custody of a foster or adoptive child or who seeks from the state custody of a foster or adoptive child that is a manner consistent with a sincerely held religious belief or moral conviction. It simply states what's in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, that religious convictions are protected. And if you live within your religious convictions and it affects who you work with for adoptions, that's legal in the state of Colorado. Now, according to the regulations the Department of Human Services established last October, that's not legal in Colorado. An adoptions agency cannot apply their religious values to their actions in an adoption agency. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Kagan. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 241? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 241. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Noes have it. Senate Bill 241 fails, is lost. Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
Motion for the body is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will rise and report.
Senate will come back to order. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee's met had a number of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee whole legislative reports that in consideration of the following task bills, business makes following recommendations. Senate Bill 13 is amended. Senate Bill 260 is amended. Passed second read order. Grace place the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1003 is amended. House Bill 1266. House Bill 1189 is amended. Passed second read order. Revised place the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 245. House Bill 1379 laid over until 5/2/18 retain their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 241 is amended. Lost second reading.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
Motion before the body is the adoption of the report to the committee of the whole. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 241 by Senator Lundberg?
Committee of the whole amendment 001. Senate Bill 241. Senator Lundberg moved to amend the report.
Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 001.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this amendment states that Senate Bill 241 did pass. And I'll tell you why I'm doing this. I'm doing it because religious liberty ought to still mean something in the state of Colorado, but it's quite obvious that it didn't a few moments ago here in the state Senate. I find that to be disappointing, rather discouraging, honestly, that we think so little of the individual liberties of the people of Colorado that we would cast a blind eye to their religious liberties and their moral convictions. I've got 7 days, well, a little bit less than 7 working days here. There are many things I'm going to miss around here, but there are some things I'm not. I ask for the passage of this amendment. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this issue is going to keep coming up in this building again and again and again. This issue between my civil rights and someone else's religious liberty. Despite the progress that's been made on civil rights for the LGBT community, I know, as a gay man, that there are still places that I'm not welcome or wanted. I know that. And it hurts, but I understand. I'm now 33 years old. I'm not a young man anymore, by many measures. And so colleagues, I'm starting to think about what my family could eventually look like. For me, that means either providing foster care or adoption, most likely. I believe I'd be a good father. I do. And if I'm willing to provide a loving and supportive and stable household for a child, what more matters than that? Does anything else matter than that? So, colleagues, I'd ask you to think long and hard before you vote on this bill. If anything else matters more than just someone loving a child, being able to take that child into their home and be a good parent to them, that's what I hope to do one day. And this bill would stand in my way of doing that.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make it clear that Senate Bill 241 doesn't prohibit anyone from engaging in an adoptive procedure here in Colorado. And if you look at the number of adoption agencies, as I said earlier, there are, I think it's like 260-some licensed adoption agencies in the state of Colorado. And there's a handful that are faith-based that say, no, we are not going to adopt same-sex couples. There are well over 200 that are quite the opposite. And that's fine. In a free society, that's quite appropriate. Senate Bill 241 doesn't prevent anyone from seeking an adoption. It defends the personal liberty, religious liberties, and the moral conscience of those engaged in running an adoption agency. You know, the irony of this whole thing is there are also some other rules out there that prevent some adoptions from occurring, like the Chinese government, for example, or the Ukrainian government. When somebody seeks to adopt from those countries here in the state of Colorado, and I use those two countries as an example because I am aware of those specifics, where they set standards as well. We have no control over that, but that's just the reality of what occurs. But the irony is the adoptive agency can't distinguish between that, but you know, when you're talking about a foreign adoption, it applies. That doesn't stop any individual in the state of Colorado from seeking an adoption. It's just that they can't work with an adoption happening from that country. So too, the only thing this does is it allows those agencies, and it's a limited number, to live within their personal conscience. And of all the values that have established this great land, it was that freedom of conscience that really drove those people to build this great country. Senate Bill 241 is very consistent with that, and it is not flying in the face. You know, I chose to not really debate on all of the details, which I could certainly do, but I know what the hour is and what the day is. But please don't think that this is prohibiting any individual in the state of Colorado from seeking an adoptive circumstance. It simply says that the agency you're working with has the right to determine who they're working with as well.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is such a personal conversation that everybody has, and we did hear it in committee, and I voted for it. And I want to tell you why. It wasn't to eliminate anyone, but to grow the ability for others from China, especially, and this is a personal story, because I have a very, very dear friend. She's like a daughter. She came from China, and she has no children, but she's 40 years old. China forced her to have 2 abortions. She absolutely loves children. Every time she sees one, she wants to hug it, and everything about kids that she won't have, but she misses so much because of what her government took. What she would do to be able to adopt a child from China and bring it here and raise it, but she can't because the government's going to deny her that also. Her opportunities are gone because of government. I think those children, deserve to have open doors of opportunity. China is serious. They tell you when you can have kids, and they tell you how many kids. And for that, my friend is very much lacking in her life. She wants to get married, and she wants to adopt. And I hope that at some point she does. And this is why it wasn't neglecting or taking anybody out of the equation. It was actually adding people in, just to place them in places where other governments, other countries will allow or will have their children go. Every child deserves an opportunity for adoption, and that's how I saw this and how I will see this, because it is about the children and opportunities for those kids. I have gay friends who have kids, and they're marvelous parents, and I mean, we all know that. We all have those people in our life. And nothing is wrong with that. And I didn't see this bill as being telling somebody they couldn't adopt. It was just giving a chance for those kids who are unadoptable to be adopted, to open that door for them. And that was reason enough for me to say, yes, I want to be able to have those kids from China come here and be adopted and hopefully give them the opportunities that otherwise aren't going to be available. So it is for the children, for the placement, and I hope they all get the homes that they so deserve.
Is there any further discussion? Motion before the body is the adoption of Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 241. Are there any no votes? Senator Jones, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Fields, Senator Guzman, Senator Kafalas, Leader Garcia, Senator Fenberg, Senator Kerr, Senator Court, Senator Donovan, Senator Kagan, Senator Moreno, Senator Quorum, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator John, Senator Merrifield, Senator Todd, Senator Williams, Senator Aguilar. With 16 ayes, 19 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill, the Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 241 is lost. Motion before the body is the adoption of the report to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 13 is amended. Senate Bill 260 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1003 is amended. House Bill 1266, House Bill 1189 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 245, House Bill 1379, laid over until 5/2/18 and retaining their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 241 is amended, lost on second reading. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over consideration of House amendments to Senate bills to Wednesday, May 2nd.
The motion is to Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I withdraw my motion.
Consideration of House amendments to Senate bills.
vote on that? I don't know. Are we starting all over again on the
The next amendments, we've already passed the motion to reconsider.
Right, which takes us back to the last Senate action, which was repassage. So if you want to reconsider repassage, we're there, but if you want to reconsider concurrence, we have to dial it back one more.
Oh, dial it back one more.
But you were on the prevailing side of.
Oh, I was on the prevailing side of concurrence.
Of concurrent.
Of repassage. No, I voted no on repassage. We did
That's right, you're right.
Yeah, so we reconsidered last Senate action, which takes us back to repassage. But if you wanted repassage, and so to
So we
get
go back to
concurrence-
repassage of the bill.
Right, so if we want to go further than that, like to concurrence, we have to do another.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the reconsideration of concurrence to House amendments to Senate Bill 85,
Having voted on the prevailing side, I take it.
in addition to having voted on the prevailing side. Thank you.
The motion is for reconsideration of concurrence on Senate Bill 85. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it. And reconsideration will, the motion is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 85?
Senate Bill 85 by Senator Todd and Representative McLaughlin concerning providing financial incentives for educators to work in rural areas in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the discussion with my colleagues across the aisle. I move to adhere to the Senate position on Senate Bill 85. Members, if you remember, we had the discussion about how important it was to help teachers. Not everybody else, teachers. That's what we want to do. We want to help teachers and fund teachers. That's why we got it right in the Senate. I ask for your yes vote to adhere to the Senate position on Senate Bill 85.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I would like to offer a substitute motion.
Go ahead.
I would like to offer a motion that we would move to a conference committee so that we could actually have the discussion about this important discussion. This is a very important bill. Back in 2016, Senator from Sterling and I carried a bill to expand teaching positions. I'm committed beyond belief to making sure that we are really moving into a way of expanding teaching positions statewide, and particularly in the rural areas. This bill that we're discussing right now, Senate Bill 85, is part 2 of that bill. Because what we have heard from our rural friends is the importance that it is not just teachers and classroom teachers, but it is also special services. And let me help you understand, because I think there seems to be a misnomer as to what special services are. These are still people who have gone through different programs to become certified. So if you've ever known a child that stutters or who has a speech impediment, a speech pathologist is a person who helps them. That's one person. A language assistant. Some children come into this world with a very tiny vocabulary, having a speech language development. that grows and develops is an assistant to those children. Audiologists. We have more children. I'm sorry, Mr. President, are we doing something else here? This is important.
Colleagues,
It's both sides of the aisle, Senator Gardner. Thank you, Mr. President. An audiologist is a person who comes in and helps children who are deaf and hard of hearing. That is a special service. An occupational therapist, a child who has difficulty with fine motor. A physical therapist for a child who has physical disabilities. Severe needs teachers, physical needs, emotional needs. We've talked so much about school safety. School nurses, those are the special service providers that we're talking about. This doesn't take away from the bill that we passed in 2016 to help grow teachers. What this does is it helps and grows those support for teachers. As I've continued to talk with teachers from all over the state, never has it been more difficult to meet the needs of so many children than it is today. And a big part of that is because there are children with special needs that are coming in to a regular classroom, and we want them to be immersed into a regular classroom, but they need assistance, they need help. And that's what special services are. They're not second-class citizens. They're still licensed. They're still a part of a school setting. And interestingly enough, in our statutes, both federally and statewide, we are required to offer services to all children. We are required to make sure when we talk about a fair and equitable education, for some children, they need more. That's what this provides. That's what this allows for. And when I talk with the superintendents from Arickaree, from Bennett, from Byers, Cheyenne Wells, Kiowa, Lyman, Strasburg, they have said, please, please help us offer these opportunities to bring these special services to our districts so that our children get the same kind of help and assistance. Why would we say this is important in the metro area and the urban area, and yet for rural kids, catch as catch can, just leave it to the classroom teacher? I was a teacher for 25 years. There were children that I needed to have additional assistance to help them be successful. That's what this second part is. It's not taking away from and saying we don't value teachers. Look at me. Would you ever hear me say we don't need teachers in Colorado? I will never say that. This is part two. This is build on to the good work that we did in 2016. Please don't shortchange our kids in the rural districts that have special needs. Give them qualified personnel. Give them an opportunity to have that same help and assistance. Our statutes cite in 2260.5-2010 explains it's in statute what special services are. This is not a made-up, let's just call in some volunteers. These are people that are trained, and if they are willing to come and work in a rural area and help and assist those children, why would we not want that? I will continue to work with all of our rural partners. I stand strong to make sure that all children in Colorado are given that same opportunity. It'd be easy for me to say, my district's okay, but I'm a teacher first. I was a teacher before I became a legislator. I am committed to every child in the state. And I don't want to shortchange them. I don't want to jeopardize them. So I would ask that we would be able to continue this conversation and go to conference committee and to be able to come up with a solution. Perhaps there's a compromise of saying we can add additional teachers as well as special services. But please know, this is a crisis. It is a crisis in our rural areas. There's a letter I want to just share briefly. Our school district advertised last spring for a school counselor. The only licensed applicant we had was not willing to move to Meeker. We hired a local individual who had the right skill set to meet the district's needs, but has been on emergency authorization this year. Next year, she will also be on emergency authorization as she begins her school counseling program through Adams State. So she is going to be starting to work on her degree and be able to continue. We desperately need additional social emotional supports in our classrooms. Often we may have the right people, but they need to pursue additional education to get the required license from CDE. They pay those costs. But if they come and they fall in love with that small rural town and they stay there, then we as a state say, hooray, we will help pay for that. We want your children in your rural districts to get the same benefits and the same opportunities as children every place else in the state of Colorado. I urge you to support an opportunity for us to keep talking about this. Please don't settle for less for your children in the rural areas. Please allow us to go to conference committee with the House. Please allow the senator from Sterling and the senator from Aurora to work together for the welfare of the children. I urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 points. When I moved when I was going into 4th grade to a new school district, the teacher thought I was behind in reading, which I was. So much so that they thought I needed extra help. So they arranged for that. They said, Matt, we want you to go to this teacher down the hall who will help you with reading. And she introduced me to the Hardy Boys books. And she was a great teacher. And I caught up and went ahead, and that teacher changed my life. We use a code for them in Colorado bureaucracy called SSPs, but they are teachers. That's the first point. Secondly, I think local school districts know what they need, whether they be rural or suburban or urban. And they should make that call, not us, because these are teachers. It's just because we have a code now that calls them something different that when I was in 4th grade, they didn't bother to do because they knew they were teachers. So I ask you to send this bill to conference committee so that we can trust local school districts to know their needs and what kinds of teachers they need. I find this whole disagreement enormously frustrating because in the end, we all want the same thing. We want our kids to do well. And I trust the local school districts to know what they need, whether they call them a teacher or an SSP, but they're really teachers. And I think you should too. So let's give this a chance, go to conference committee to do that, and trust our local districts.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to encourage an opportunity to go to conference because I think there can be a solution here. For example, we could prioritize the money to say that it would go towards teachers first, and then pending the number of applicants, if there is leftover money and no applicants, we could then direct that money to go to the special service providers. So that's one possible solution that we could hammer out in a conference committee. A second possible solution that we could hammer out in conference committee would be to prioritize based on need in the districts in order to give them a little bit more local control. So for example, down in southwestern Colorado, I have a letter here from a couple of the school districts down there where they gave me some information about the number of special service providers that they employ in their district. Currently, they employ 71 through their school district funding in order to provide 16 different service areas to students with disabilities who qualify for services through their individualized education programs. Those are IEPs, you'll hear them referred to as. So these special service providers include things like speech-language pathology, occupational therapists, teachers of visual deficits, and teachers of deaf and hard of hearing, among others. So they're all teachers, and they're all working in circumstances with children that need these additional supports. Now, what's really important here is that these districts in southwestern Colorado, just like all districts in Colorado, are mandated by law for children who qualify to receive these services as a part of their IEP. And we can't deliver those services that are mandated by law if we don't have any of them in the area. Now, I carried a bill a few years ago that would have given districts, individual school districts, permission to share so that they could cross district lines. So if you were in Montrose and you needed a teacher who could teach to deaf students and you didn't have one in your district, you had permission to share with Delta County. Because up until that point in 2014, that was actually not allowed. Districts weren't allowed to share those kinds of services. So now we do. We do allow districts to share services, but the problem that we have in southwestern Colorado, in this district in particular, is that there are none that are within 2 to 3 hours away. So, because these services are mandated by law for children who qualify, our school districts are liable if these services are not provided. Quote, we ensure that the schools will be able to meet the needs of these students through a cooperation of special education funding, but the present circumstances find us unable to staff these hard-to-fill positions through our region in both southwestern Colorado, multiple districts, multiple counties. These special service providers hold master's level degrees with additional certifications for professional practices. They are on the teacher pay scale, often with a large student loan debt, and these special service providers are able to work across state borders in education or in the medical field for a much greater salary incentive than we can offer in southwestern Colorado. It is incredibly difficult to retain and recruit SSPs in the current school funding condition. Additionally, we have found that in order to ensure that these services are provided per regulation, we have had to contract with third-party contract agencies. This costs our school districts more than 40% of a typical salary. So for example, a speech therapist working for a district might be on a salary equal to $30 an hour. A contract company, however, will charge the district administrative unit between $60 and $80 an hour for those services. And we currently have contracted 3 SSPs for positions that we were unable to fill this year. This is an incredible expenditure from the budget. If we are going to be able to provide students with the special education services mandated by law in rural areas, we need to recognize that SSPs are educators who are essential and a required team member in supporting the successful outcomes and improved academic achievement of students with disabilities. If we recognize our SSPs as educators, it will become evident that their value to our school communities is equal to that of other educators. This is one letter from several districts in southwestern Colorado. In addition, I have a letter from school districts within the San Luis Valley. The districts of Alamosa, RE11J, Centennial R1, Center 26J, Creed, Mineral County 1, Del Norte C7, Moffett SAG 2, Monte Vista C8, Mountain Valley RE1, North Conejos RE1J, Sanford RE6J, Sangre de Cristo RE22J, Sargent RE33, and Sierra Grande R30, and South Conejos RE10. This collection of 14 districts have written about the importance of this bill to their districts with regard to the component of providing this incentive in order to recruit special service providers to their area. And the reason that they are in favor of this, the reason why they need this, is because the average cost of contracting for these services to these districts, these 14 districts, is $70 per hour. So approximately $93,000 annually, which means that they pay $25 to $30 more per position when positions cannot be filled and contracting companies are utilized. So for example, there are 2 speech therapists who are contracted, 1 PT, 1 teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing, 1 for orientation and mobility, and 1 vision specialist. This is a teacher for the blind and visually impaired. That was in the year 25 to 2016. In 2016 to 2017, they had to contract for 2 speech therapists, 1 PT, a teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing, 1 orientation and mobility specialist, and 1 vision specialist. In 2017 and 18, they had to contract for 1 speech therapist, 1 occupational therapist, 1 school psychologist, 1 vision specialist, and 1 hard of hearing teacher. And they had to contract with them because there weren't any that were moving to that area that were working in that district. And so they had to try and hire out in order to fill that need because they are mandated by law to fulfill that individual education plan, that IEP. So these are just some of the examples. Last year, the legislature passed a bill that initiated a study. It was a collaboration between the Department of Higher Ed and the Department of Education, where they looked into the teacher shortage issue. And they wanted to know what's causing it, how great is it, where is it most pressing. And it's no surprise that the majority of the problems were in rural Colorado. A majority of the issues were specific content areas, things like math, foreign language, special education. So those were the content areas that they were really having difficulty filling in addition to the areas. But on top of that, they called out in the study, and I have it here marked in the 2 places where they called out in the study, that special service providers, in particular, speech pathologists, were most acute in Colorado. There is a study that was recently done just this year, it was in 2017, that talked about the critical shortage of speech language pathologists in the public school setting. And so So one of the things that they did in this study is they did a survey to try and determine, is there a reason why speech pathologists are choosing not to go into schools, to serve children in schools? They were trying to figure out why, because it's definitely a need. It's something that is required by many IEPs for children with disabilities. And so they were trying to figure out what about speech pathology in particular was so difficult. Why could we not train them, hire them, recruit them, bring them to an area? It's a great study, and I'd be willing to share it with anybody who is willing to read it. So right now, I would like to encourage an aye vote on the ability to go to conference committee, because I believe that we have the possibility of a solution in front of us. And so I would ask for an aye vote on the motion.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, there were a lot of great points brought up. We heard comments about a third party charging $75. That's BOCES. That's who we contract with. My Northeast, or the BOCES up in my area, the average salary for them is in the mid-60,000. Starting teacher in Sterling is just over 29,000. That's why I think it's important for teachers. But with that said, I am always happy to have the conversation and try and figure out if there's a solution. I would urge your aye vote to go to conference committee.
Is there any further discussion? Motion before the body is to not concur with the House amendments on Senate Bill 85 and that a conference committee be appointed. Are there any no votes on that motion? 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused. That motion is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over the balance of the consideration of House amendments calendar.
The motion is to lay over the balance of the consideration of House amendments.
2 Senate bills.
To tomorrow? To
lay over the balance the consideration of House amendments to Senate bills calendar till tomorrow, Wednesday, May 2nd.
the motion is to lay that balance over to tomorrow, May 2nd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Ayes have it, and that will lay over. Mr. Majority Leader, do you want to continue? Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read all those appointments on the consent calendar?
Members of the Colorado State Fair Authority Board of Commissioners for terms expiring November 1st, 2021. William Joseph Hybel, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Republican, residing in the 5th Congressional District, reappointed. Michelle Renee Brown, Pueblo West, Colorado, Democrat, residing in the 3rd Congressional District and County of the Fair, appointed. Members of the Parks and Wildlife Commission for terms expiring July 1st, 2021. Marie Haskett of Meeker, Colorado, as a representative of sports persons and outfitters in the west of the Continental Divide, appointed.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar consisting of members of the Colorado State Fair Authority Board of Commissioners and a member of the Parks and Wildlife Commission.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of all the appointments listed on the governor's appointments consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, those appointments are confirmed. Following persons have been appointed to the Colorado State Fair Authority Board of Commissioners: William Joseph Hybel, Michelle Renee Brown. To the Parks and Wildlife Commission, Marie E. Haskett. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over consideration of governor's appointments till tomorrow, Wednesday, May 2nd.
The motion is to lay over the consideration of governor's appointments calendar till tomorrow, May 2nd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that will lay over. Conference Committee report.
First report of the First Conference Committee on House Bill 1295 to the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Your first Conference Committee appointed on House Bill 1295 concerning modifications to the Colorado Food and Drug Act to allow products containing industrial hemp and in connection therewith, establishing that products containing industrial hemp are not adulterated or misbranded by virtue of containing industrial hemp has met and reports that it is agreed upon the following. 1, that the House accedes to Senate amendments made to the bill as the amendments appear in the revised bill. The following changes. 2, that under the authority granted the committee to consider matters not at issue between the two houses, the following amendments be recommended. Respectfully submitted. House Committee, Representatives Escar Chair, Salazar and Catlin, Senators Quorum Chair, Guzman and Crowder.
Message from the House.
The House has passed on third reading and transmitted revised statutes. House Bill 1352. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted revised statutes. House Bill 1378, 1405, 1411, 1115, 1363, 1396, 1497, 1429, 1267, 1376, 1289, 1409, 1419. Amendments printed in the House Journal, May 1st, 2018. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted revised statutes. House Concurrent Resolution 1002, minutes printed in the House Journal, April 30th, 2018. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted revised statutes. House Bill 1011, 1357, minutes printed in the House Journal, April 30th, 2018. Amendment on third reading is printed in the House Journal, May 1st, 2018. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted with Senate Bill 225, 232. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted revised statutes. Senate Bill 205, 12200. Amendments printed in the House Journal, May 1st, 2018. The House has voted to grant the House conferees on First Conference Committee on House Bill 1295 to consider matters not at issue between the two houses. The Speaker has appointed Representatives Bridges, Chairman, Weissman, and Van Winkle as House conferees on the First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 68. The House has voted to grant the House conferees on First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 15 to consider matters not at issue between the two houses.
Message from the Reviser.
We hereby transmit without comment House Bill 1352 and 1429 without comment as amended. House Concurrent Resolution 1002 without comment as amended. House Bill 1011, 1115, 1267, 1289, 1357, 1363. 1376, 1378, 1396, 1405, 1407, 1409, 1411, and 1419 without comment as amended. Senate Bill 12, 200, and 205.
Announcements. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, colleagues, visitors in the gallery, today is May 1st, Law Day in the United States. As many of you know, President Dwight Eisenhower instituted Law Day and proclaimed the first one 60 years ago in response, frankly, to May Day celebrations in the communist world. The theme of Law Day this year is Separation of Powers, Framework for Freedom. James Madison said, ambition must be made to counteract ambition. That was in Federalist 51. Madison believed that the Constitution's principle of separations of powers and checks and balances preserve political liberty. They provide a framework for freedom. Members, I would like to read not all of, but portions of the Law Day proclamation by President Donald Trump. The President has said, the framers of our Constitution created a government with distinct and independent branches, the legislative, the executive, and judicial, because they recognized the risk of concentrating power in one authority. As James Madison wrote, the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. By separating the powers of government into three co-equal branches and giving each branch certain powers to check the others, the Constitution provides a framework in which the rule of law has flourished. The President's proclamation goes on to say, the commitment to the rule of law lives on today. It drives the debates we see around the country about the growth of the administrative state and regulatory authority, and about the unfortunate trend of district court rulings that exceed traditional limits on the judicial power. We also see that commitment in the people's demand that their representatives comply with the Constitution, and in the representatives and senators themselves who take seriously their oaths to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. President Trump ends his proclamation by saying, I urge all Americans, including government officials, to observe this day by reflecting upon the importance of the rule of law in our nation and displaying the flag of the United States in support of this national observance. And I especially urge the legal profession, the press, and the radio, television, and media industries to promote and participate in the observance of this day. And members, you can see the entire proclamation at the American Bar Association website. It is a privilege to be an attorney in this, the greatest nation in the world, the freest nation in the world, protected by our Constitution. Thank you, members, for your attention.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Appropriations Committee and anyone who might potentially have a bill coming up in appropriations, we will be meeting tomorrow morning at the appointed hour of 8:30 in our regular committee room, and we will know what bills we will be hearing just as soon as the committees finish their work this afternoon or evening. So stay tuned, and we'll keep you informed. But committee members, please be there at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues in finance, we will start at, let's call it 1:45 today. And also for tomorrow, please add to your calendar House Bills 1255, 1410, and 1350. So for an even, I think that gives us an even 20 for tomorrow.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President. State Veterans and Military Affairs will start at 1:30, and the first bills up, we're going to do a little movement in the calendar list, but we will hear House Bill 1309 and 1412. Those will move to the front of the list.
Any other announcements?
Your office or yours?
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we will quite possibly have bills or committee reports to read over later. You do not need to be here. Mr. President, I move the Senate recess until 1:30 p.m. today.
The motion is to recess until 1:30 p.m. today. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we'll be in recess till 1:30 p.m.